The room was buzzing with excitement. Silicon Valley's annual tech conference was in full swing, and the air felt electric with the latest innovations, mind-blowing inventions, and the usual hype that followed every major announcement. But there was one thing that nobody expected, an encounter that would turn everything upside down. Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur behind SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, stood on stage, delivering his keynote speech with his usual mix of confidence and relentless optimism. As he spoke about the future of humanity, the inevitable colonization of Mars, and the necessity of sustainable energy, his words flowed like a promise to push humanity forward, no matter the cost. But that was before he met Oliver. Oliver was unlike anyone Musk had ever met. At 14 years old, the boy was a walking enigma. A child prodigy with an IQ of 225, Oliver had become somewhat of a myth in the tech world. He had been solving complex mathematical equations before he could even read, and his theories on quantum computing were being whispered about in elite scientific circles. Yet here he was, at a conference designed for the brightest minds of the century, sitting in the back row, his young face illuminated by the glow of a laptop screen. No one really knew why he was there, except that he was. The crowd's chatter grew louder as Musk wrapped up his speech. People were applauding, clapping, eagerly discussing the future of space travel, but something about this moment felt different. Musk, despite his usual self-assurance, couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, not by fans or reporters, but by someone whose intellect far outpaced his own. As he stepped off the stage, he felt a tap on his shoulder. "Mr. Musk," came a voice from behind him. It was sharp, clear, and calm, with no hesitation. Musk turned, expecting to find another eager fan or a well-meaning entrepreneur, but instead, he was met with the curious eyes of a 14-year-old boy. "Yes?" Musk said, a little taken aback. "I have some questions," the boy said, his eyes fixed on Musk's with an intensity that made him pause. "And a few thoughts about your Mars project. You see, there's a fundamental flaw in the assumptions you're making about human colonization of other planets." Musk blinked. The boy continued, "Colonizing Mars is great, but it's a distraction. You're focusing on leaving Earth without addressing the real problems we face here, problems that are more immediate and pressing than interplanetary travel. It's like building a luxury yacht while the house is burning down." The words hit Musk like a thunderclap. He stood there for a moment, stunned, trying to digest what had just been said. The boy didn't seem to be nervous or awestruck. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply speaking his mind, and those words were not what Musk expected from a teenager, let alone one that hadn't even completed high school yet. "You're saying we should focus on Earth first?" Musk asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's exactly what we're doing. Tesla is pushing sustainable energy solutions, and SolarCity is working to make Earth a more livable planet. But we have to look beyond. We have to expand. We have to survive as a species." Oliver didn't back down. "Survival isn't about escaping Earth. It's about fixing it. You're thinking about the wrong problem. Mars might give us a backup plan, but it doesn't address the heart of the issue here. You can't fix humanity's problems by running away." Musk felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was something deeper, something that rattled him at his core. He was used to debating ideas, but this was different. This kid, this genius, was challenging everything he believed about the future. The crowd around them had started to notice. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who was this kid? What was he saying to Elon Musk? Some took out their phones to capture the moment. Others leaned in to hear the exchange. The tension in the air was palpable. "Why don't we sit down and talk about this?" Musk finally said, his curiosity getting the better of him. "I'm intrigued." As they walked toward a quieter corner of the conference hall, Musk's mind raced. He had met some of the brightest people in the world, but never anyone like this. Oliver wasn't a fan. He wasn't here for validation. He wasn't impressed by Elon Musk's successes. He was here to debate. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. Musk thought, remembering a familiar phrase from his public talks. But this time, it wasn't a marketing line. It was a question of where they would go next in this conversation. This wasn't just an interaction. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that might change the course of history. Oliver looked at him, almost as if reading his thoughts. "You're probably wondering why I'm here, right?" the boy said, almost reading Musk's mind. "Why would a 14-year-old have anything meaningful to say to someone like you?" Musk smiled, albeit a little nervously. "Honestly, yeah. But now I'm more curious than ever." Oliver leaned forward, his voice growing serious. "You're thinking about the future of humanity as if it's all about technology. But the future isn't about gadgets or spaceships. It's about what we choose to prioritize, what we care about most." Musk felt a slight pang in his chest. He had always prided himself on his vision for the future. But here was this kid, this boy, telling him that his focus on technology and space exploration might be missing something crucial. Then what should we prioritize? Musk asked, genuinely interested now. Oliver's answer was simple, yet profound. We should prioritize saving our planet, not just running away from it. And just like that, the world of technology, innovation, and space exploration collided with. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk sat down across from Oliver at a quiet table tucked in the back corner of the conference hall. The noise from the crowd, still bustling with excitement over the keynote speech, seemed distant now, fading into the background as Musk focused on the young boy in front of him. Oliver, with his intense gaze and calm demeanor, wasn't what Musk had expected. In fact, he wasn't sure what he had expected. But it certainly wasn't a 14-year-old who was challenging his entire worldview. Oliver had already begun typing something on his laptop, his fingers moving so quickly it was almost impossible to follow. Musk couldn't help but stare. The boy's mind seemed to be working on multiple levels, processing information at lightning speed. "So, tell me about your background," Musk said, leaning back in his chair. "Where did you come from, Oliver? I mean, a 14-year-old with an IQ of 225 doesn't just show up out of nowhere." Oliver glanced up, his face unreadable. "It's not as glamorous as you might think," he replied, his voice calm, almost too calm for someone his age. "I grew up in a small town. My parents are both professors, physics and mathematics. They never pushed me to be a genius. They just encouraged me to think for myself, to ask questions, and to explore ideas that others might find difficult." Musk nodded, impressed despite himself. "And you've been solving complex problems since you were, what, 5? Oliver smirked, but there was no arrogance in it. "Something like that," he said. "I guess I've always been fascinated by how things work. Not just the what or the how, but the why. Why do things happen? Why do we do what we do? Most people stop asking those questions after a while. I haven't." Musk leaned forward. "I'm listening." Oliver continued, "I was reading advanced textbooks by the time I was 8. I skipped a few grades, took college-level courses when I was 11, but it's not about the academic stuff. It's about seeing the world differently. I've spent a lot of time thinking about where humanity is headed, and more importantly, where it should go." "And that's where you've got a problem with me going to Mars?" Musk asked, raising an eyebrow. Oliver met his gaze. "Not just Mars. You're obsessed with pushing humanity outward, but you're forgetting that we've got a huge mess here at home. I think people are missing the point. We're talking about colonizing another planet like it's an answer to our problems. But we're already struggling to keep this one from falling apart." Musk's mind raced as he processed Oliver's words. It wasn't the first time he'd heard criticisms of his Mars vision. People had been saying for years that space exploration was a distraction from the real problems here on Earth. But hearing it from a 14-year-old with an IQ that rivaled the most brilliant minds in science, that was something else entirely. "I get it," Musk said slowly. "You think we should focus more on fixing Earth first. And I do agree with you on one level. But the thing is, Oliver, we can't afford to put all our eggs in one basket. Space is the ultimate insurance policy. If humanity's going to survive in the long term, we need to become a multiplanetary species. Otherwise, we're at the mercy of Earth's natural cycles, whether it's asteroid impacts, climate change, or something we haven't even thought of yet." Oliver didn't immediately respond. He was quiet for a moment, his fingers hovering above the keyboard as if considering his next move carefully. Finally, he spoke. "There's a problem with that thinking. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Humanity's biggest existential threat isn't a comet or a solar flare. It's us. We're the ones making decisions that could lead to our own extinction through war, environmental destruction, or a technology we can't control. Musk raised an eyebrow. So what do you propose we do? Give up on space exploration and focus entirely on solving our earthly problems? I'm not saying we should give up on space, Oliver replied. I'm saying we need a balance. Yes, we should continue exploring space, because that's part of our nature. But we need to tackle the problems here first. We need to build a society that's sustainable, not just technologically advanced. And we need to stop pretending that we can just keep expanding without facing the consequences of our actions here on Earth. Musk stared at the boy, suddenly feeling small in comparison. There was something about the way Oliver spoke, something unshakable in his conviction, that made Musk rethink the very nature of progress. He had always believed that the future of humanity was about reaching the stars. But was it possible that the future also depended on how well they took care of the planet beneath their feet? Okay, Musk said after a long pause. You've got me thinking. So, what's the solution? How do we save Earth and still look toward the stars? Oliver's eyes lit up, as if this was exactly the kind of challenge he had been waiting for. Well, it starts with energy. Our entire civilization is built on fossil fuels. If we can't shift to sustainable, renewable energy sources, and I'm talking about far beyond solar panels and wind turbines, we're not going to make it. We need to build a new kind of energy grid, one that's distributed, decentralized, and powered by clean, limitless sources. Fusion, geothermal, and even harnessing the power of the oceans. And we need to scale up quickly. If we don't make that transition now, it won't matter how many rockets we send to Mars. Earth will no longer be habitable. Musk's mind whirred as he listened. The boy's words were like a splash of cold water. He had always known that Earth's energy crisis was a looming problem, but hearing it laid out so starkly was different. Oliver was right about one thing. Without a solution to our planet's sustainability problems, no amount of innovation in space travel would matter. What else? Musk asked, genuinely curious. What else do we need to fix here on Earth? Oliver didn't hesitate. We need to rethink our entire economic system. The way we value growth, progress, and consumption is fundamentally broken. We need to focus on sustainability, not just GDP growth. We need a system that rewards creating real value for people, not just maximizing profit for corporations. Musk nodded slowly, his mind spinning with ideas. This was a conversation he wasn't prepared for, certainly not from a 14-year-old boy. But maybe that was the point. Maybe it wasn't about being prepared. It was about listening and hearing the truth, no matter where it came from. As the conversation continued, Musk began to realize something important. Oliver wasn't just criticizing him. He was challenging him to think differently, to look at the world and the future through a new lens. It was clear now that this wasn't just some random encounter. This was the beginning of a dialogue that would reshape Musk's thinking in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The conference hall outside was buzzing with the excitement of the crowd still wrapped in the aftermath of Elon Musk's speech. But inside the small, quiet corner where Musk and Oliver sat, the world seemed a little different. The noise was muffled, the air thick with the weight of their conversation. Musk had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but something about Oliver's calm demeanor and sharp intellect made him feel off balance. Musk was used to being the smartest person in the room. He had built companies that redefined industries. He had launched rockets into space, revolutionized electric cars, and even dreamt of a human colony on Mars. But now, across from him, was a kid who seemed to have a bigger vision and a clearer understanding of what was at stake than anyone Musk had ever met. After a few moments of silence, Musk leaned forward, his hands clasped in front of him. So you think that the biggest threat to humanity's survival isn't space exploration, but the way we're running things on Earth? That's a bold statement. Oliver nodded, his eyes unwavering. It's the truth. If you look at history, you'll see a pattern. Civilizations rise and fall based on how they manage their resources, their people, and the environment around them. The way we're living now, unquestionably consuming everything in sight without regard for the long-term consequences, is a recipe for disaster. Musk raised an eyebrow. But if we don't take risks, if we don't push forward into space, then what's the alternative? Just wait until we've run out of time? Oliver's lips twitched into a half-smile. No, I'm not saying we should stop pushing forward. I'm saying we need to push forward together, and that means focusing on solving the problems that will determine whether we even have a future to explore. Space is exciting, and I understand why you're passionate about it. But if we neglect the problems here, we risk destroying the very foundation that space exploration relies on, our planet. Musk leaned back, running a hand through his hair. He could feel the weight of Oliver's words pressing against him, but he wasn't ready to give up on his vision yet. He had put so much into SpaceX and his other ventures. The goal of making humanity a multiplanetary species was more than a dream. It was the backup plan for the survival of the human race. And he wasn't about to let that vision slip away. Look, I get it, Musk said, his voice more measured now. I agree with you that Earth has its problems. I'm working on solutions. Tesla, Solar City, Neuralink. These are all part of the bigger picture. But those things take time. In the meantime, we need a fail-safe. Something that guarantees humanity's future in case something goes wrong here. Oliver paused, considering Musk's words. A fail-safe. I get that, he said slowly. But I still think you're missing something. What if the fail-safe isn't about running away to Mars? What if it's about making sure Earth doesn't need saving in the first place? Musk's mind whirred with the implications of that question. So you're saying we should put everything into saving Earth without looking to the stars? No, Oliver replied. I'm saying we need both. But saving Earth should be our primary focus. If we can solve the problems here, we can set the foundation for a sustainable future, and then we can look to the stars with a sense of purpose, not desperation. Musk sat in silence for a long moment. This was not the conversation he had expected to have today. In fact, it was far from it. He had thought he was going to meet a bright young mind, someone to inspire with his ideas about space and technology, but instead, Oliver had turned everything around. The kid wasn't impressed by Mars. He wasn't even interested in the flashy technology Musk had poured so much of his life into. He cared about the foundation, the core problems that Musk's companies were trying to solve, but in a much deeper, broader sense. It wasn't just about creating electric cars or launching rockets. It was about the why behind everything Musk did, and Oliver had just forced him to confront that. You're saying we need to build a better foundation first. I get it, Musk said slowly. But how do we do that? What's the plan? Oliver smiled, an almost imperceptible curve of his lips, as though he had been waiting for this moment. It's all about energy, he said. The planet's energy infrastructure is broken. We're still addicted to fossil fuels, and the longer we continue down that path, the worse it's going to get. We need a global transition to clean, renewable energy, but not just solar or wind. We need fusion, geothermal, ocean energy, technologies that can provide clean power on a global scale. If we can make that shift, we'll solve a whole host of other problems too, like climate change, resource scarcity, and geopolitical conflict. Musk leaned forward again, his mind racing. He had always believed in the potential of solar and electric cars to change the world, but fusion, real, working fusion, was still in the realm of theory. The idea of harnessing the power of the sun on Earth was the kind of game-changing technology Musk had always dreamed of. If we could harness fusion, that would change everything, Musk muttered under his breath. Unlimited, clean energy. Oliver's eyes gleamed. Exactly. And that's just the beginning. If we can create a truly sustainable system here on Earth, then we have the space to grow, literally. We can explore other planets, expand our civilization, without worrying about overconsumption or environmental collapse. Musk's thoughts were racing now. Oliver was right. If they could solve the global energy crisis, it would be the key to unlocking humanity's future, not just on Earth, but beyond. And yet, he knew the challenge would be enormous. So you're saying that if we focus on renewable energy and fixing the Earth's problems first, then we'll have a stronger foundation to build space exploration on? Oliver nodded. Exactly. You're looking at it as a binary choice. Either we fix Earth, or we go to space. But it's not an either/or. It's about creating a world that can sustain both. Musk's eyes widened as the full scope of what Oliver was saying began to sink in. The possibilities were endless. But there was also a weight to it. A burden. If they were going to change the world, they would have to face a truth that few had been willing to acknowledge. The clock was ticking. They didn't have forever. Musk sat back, feeling a mix of awe and trepidation. "You're a remarkable kid, Oliver. I've never met anyone like you." Oliver smiled, though it wasn't a boastful smile. It was one of quiet understanding. "I'm not special, Mr. Musk. I'm just paying attention." And for the first time in years, Elon Musk felt as though he was learning something important. Not from the future, not from a tech conference, but from a kid who saw the world in a way he had never imagined before. Elon Musk's mind was a whirlwind. He hadn't expected to come into this meeting with a 14-year-old prodigy and leave questioning everything he believed about the future. But that's exactly what had happened. Sitting across from Oliver, he felt both challenged and intrigued by the bold, unsettling ideas the boy had laid out. It was clear now that this conversation wasn't just an intellectual sparring match. It was a call to action. Oliver wasn't just some gifted kid with a high IQ. He was offering a perspective that Musk had never truly considered. And now, Musk couldn't shake the thought that perhaps Oliver was right. Perhaps there was more to saving humanity than just pushing the envelope on space exploration. But the reality of it hit Musk like a punch in the stomach. Solving the problems Oliver mentioned, energy sustainability, fixing global systems, creating a new kind of society, wasn't just a matter of technological advancement. It was about transforming humanity's core values. And that was going to be much harder than launching a rocket. As the conversation continued, Oliver's words hung in the air like a thick fog. They were discussing energy, as they had before, but now Musk was beginning to see the larger picture. Solar power, electric vehicles, and even Neuralink were all part of a grand design. Yes, but Oliver was suggesting something even more monumental. "If we solve the energy problem," Oliver said, tapping away at his laptop again, "we could eliminate most of the root causes of our planetary crises. No more dependence on fossil fuels. No more resource wars. No more widespread poverty. And then we could channel our resources into things like space exploration, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, things that would actually move us forward as a species." Musk watched him, absorbed in the intensity of the conversation. Oliver's conviction was powerful, but there was an underlying calmness to the boy that made him seem even more confident in his beliefs. The clarity with which Oliver could articulate the complexities of human survival was nothing short of mesmerizing. "Okay," Musk said, running a hand through his hair, "but you're asking for an overhaul, a global shift in priorities. And that's not something you can just do with technology alone. You need politics, policy, economics. You need to move entire nations." Oliver gave a small shrug. "That's true, but you don't need everyone. The right people in the right places can lead the change. Look at the environmental movements in the past century. They started small, but eventually got a global reach. Change can happen quickly if you know where to direct the energy." Musk couldn't help but feel both excitement and dread. The possibilities were immense, but the road ahead was anything but certain. Oliver's vision wasn't just about better tech. It was about rethinking human civilization itself. And that was terrifying, especially when Musk's own ventures had been built on the idea of technological breakthroughs, not political revolutions. "I see where you're coming from," Musk said slowly, "but this is bigger than I anticipated. Even I can't solve the energy crisis on my own. There's too much bureaucracy, too many competing interests. It's a battle on so many fronts." Oliver looked at him, unflinching. "That's where you come in. You're already leading the charge in technology. You've got the platform, the resources, and the influence to push this forward. People already listen when you talk. You could shape the conversation, change the narrative, create the market for renewable technologies. You don't need to wait for governments to catch up. You can create the momentum." Musk felt a weight settle in his chest. It was one thing to launch a company, to make rockets fly, or make electric cars sexy. It was another thing entirely to try and shift the world's entire economic and energy system. That was a task of unimaginable scale. "You're talking about a revolution," Musk said. "A real revolution. Not just in terms of technology, but in terms of society. And I'm not sure I can pull that off alone." Oliver's eyes narrowed with the kind of intensity that Musk had only seen in a few people in his life. People who knew something others didn't. You're not alone. You've got a team of people working with you. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, these are already institutions. They can become the catalyst for the change you want to see. And you don't need to change everything overnight. But if you focus on that energy revolution, if you start showing the world that we can live in a way that's sustainable and equitable, then the people will follow. Musk sat back, contemplating Oliver's words. It was an audacious idea, yes, but it felt possible. If he could leverage his existing companies, his brands, and his reputation, maybe, just maybe, he could shift the conversation on a global scale. If he could get the world thinking about renewable energy and sustainability as more than just a buzzword, if he could lead by example, then the kind of change Oliver was talking about might actually be within reach. "You've got guts, kid," Musk said, a small grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'll give you that." Oliver didn't smile back. "I'm not trying to be gutsy, Mr. Musk. I'm trying to make sure humanity has a future." The words hit Musk with unexpected force. He had always considered himself a forward-thinking individual. His ambitions had always been grand, always focused on the next frontier, on Mars, on pushing the limits of what humanity could achieve. But now, here was a kid who was pushing him to think about something even more important, the future of humanity on this planet. And that was something Musk had never fully considered. "So," Musk said after a moment, his tone thoughtful, "how do we start? What's the first step?" Oliver looked at him, and for the first time since they had begun their conversation, a small, almost imperceptible smile crossed his face. "We start with energy. You've already got the technology, Mr. Musk. You've got the resources. You've got the connections. The next step is showing the world that we can make the impossible possible. It starts with you leading the charge for an energy revolution." Musk looked at the boy, and for the first time, he felt a sense of urgency. Not just about space, not just about the rockets or the cars or the technology, but about something bigger, something that could redefine humanity's future on this planet. And for the first time, Musk found himself wondering if the impossible wasn't so impossible after all. Elon Musk sat in his private office late into the night, the soft hum of his computer screen the only sound in the otherwise quiet room. He had been staring at a blank document for what felt like hours, the weight of Oliver's words pressing against his mind. "We start with energy." The phrase echoed in his thoughts like a mantra, each repetition more urgent than the last. Musk had been a visionary his entire life, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But until now, his ambitions had always been rooted in technological advancements, creating products that could disrupt industries, launch humanity into space, and change the world's approach to clean energy. But Oliver had pushed him further. The idea of an energy revolution was bigger than any tech breakthrough Musk had worked on. It wasn't just about making a better battery or launching more electric cars. It was about reimagining how the entire world consumed and distributed energy. The more Musk thought about it, the more he realized that this wasn't just an opportunity. It was a responsibility. It was around 2 a.m. when Musk finally sat up straighter in his chair. He pulled up a new document and began typing furiously. The words flowed quickly as he outlined a series of objectives, steps that could begin to lay the foundation for this new movement, this new mission. It was bold, it was risky, and it would change everything. He knew that the first challenge would be convincing the world's power brokers, the politicians, the CEOs, the industry leaders, that such a massive shift in energy infrastructure was not only necessary but also feasible. This wouldn't be easy. Too many vested interests were tied to fossil fuels and outdated energy systems. But Musk had never been afraid of taking on the impossible. He'd done it before with SpaceX and Tesla, and now he was ready to do it again. He thought back to Oliver's words, "You don't need everyone. You need the right people in the right places." It was true. If he could get the ball rolling, if he could show that the technology was available and the world was ready for change, the rest would follow. He needed to gather the right minds, rally the right forces, and move fast. The next morning, Musk's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Gwynne Shotwell, the president and COO of SpaceX. "Are we on track for the Mars launch this week? Meeting at 10? Musk paused, his fingers hovering over the screen. The Mars mission. something he had devoted years of his life to, was one of the most ambitious goals SpaceX had ever undertaken. But today, it didn't seem as important, not compared to what was now unfolding in his mind. The Mars mission could wait. The future of Earth and humanity's survival was what mattered now. He quickly typed back, "Yes, but we'll have to push it. We need to talk about something bigger." Shotwell's response came quickly. "Bigger? You've got my attention." Musk leaned back in his chair and stared out the window. The bright sunlight streaming into his office seemed almost symbolic. He had a feeling that today would mark the beginning of something monumental. Later that morning, at the SpaceX headquarters, Musk sat at the head of the conference table, flanked by Shotwell and several key executives from Tesla, Neuralink, and the Boring Company. The room was filled with a sense of anticipation. Something was different. They all sensed it. Musk had always been known for his bold ideas, but today, there was a palpable shift in his energy. "Gwyn, I need you to listen carefully," Musk began, his voice calm but firm. "We're going to pivot. Space exploration is still a priority, but there's something bigger on the horizon. Something that we've been missing." Shotwell exchanged a glance with the others, who were listening intently. "What are you talking about, Elon? Bigger than Mars?" Musk nodded. "Bigger than Mars. It's time to start pushing for a global energy revolution. We've been working on electric vehicles, solar power, and other technologies that can change the world, but the next step is much more radical. We need to overhaul how the world produces and consumes energy." Shotwell raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening, but that's a hell of a shift. How do you propose we do that?" Musk took a deep breath. "We already have the technology for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and storage. We've been pushing for solar energy with SolarCity, and we've got the electric car market through Tesla. But there's more we can do. The world is still relying on fossil fuels, and the change is happening too slowly. We need to accelerate it, and not just in pockets of the world. We need a global transition to clean energy." The room was silent for a moment. No one interrupted. This was big, bigger than they had ever anticipated. "Think about it," Musk continued. "If we could accelerate the adoption of renewable energy at a global scale, it would not only solve our climate problems, it would also stabilize economies, reduce conflicts over resources, and create a new future for the next generation. This could be the game changer we've been looking for." Shotwell leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Musk. "What's the plan? What do we do next?" Musk smiled, knowing that they were all in this with him. "We start with partnerships. With the right people in the right places, we can create a global network of innovators and leaders. The world needs a vision, our vision, and we need to sell it. Now, I'm going to need all of you to be on board, because this is going to take everything we've got." For the next few weeks, Musk and his team began putting the pieces together. He called in experts from Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and SolarCity, as well as thinkers from outside his usual circle. They began brainstorming strategies, developing blueprints for the kind of infrastructure that would support a global transition to renewable energy. They knew that it wouldn't be easy. The fossil fuel industry was powerful, and there would be fierce opposition from governments, corporations, and interest groups who were deeply invested in the status quo. But Musk had never been one to shy away from a challenge. He was ready to go head-to-head with anyone who stood in the way of his vision for a sustainable, multi-planetary future. As the team began to lay out their plan, Musk found himself thinking more and more about Oliver. The kid had been right. The energy revolution was the foundation of everything. The key to humanity's survival wasn't just about reaching Mars. It was about making sure the Earth could sustain us long enough to get there. And for the first time, Musk felt the weight of that responsibility settle onto his shoulders. He wasn't just the CEO of SpaceX or Tesla. He wasn't just the man behind Mars. He was a catalyst for something far more important, a movement that could change the course of history. As the team continued their planning, Musk couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. For the first time in years, he felt like he was working on something that was truly going to change the world. This wasn't just about building rockets or electric cars. It was about saving the future of humanity, and maybe even creating a better world in the process. Elon Musk had always been a man of action. He wasn't one to waste time on theoretical discussions or abstract concepts. But as he moved forward with the energy revolution, He realized that this mission required more than just technical know-how and bold ideas. It required persuasion. The world needed to believe that this wasn't just another tech dream. It had to be framed as the future of civilization itself. He spent the next several days working tirelessly with his team, refining their vision and preparing to take it to the world's leaders. They knew they needed to demonstrate not only that renewable energy was feasible, but that it was imperative for humanity's survival. It was no longer just about mitigating climate change. It was about building a future that would sustain life on Earth for generations to come. That's when the idea hit him. He had done it before with Tesla, made electric cars desirable and cool. He had done it with SpaceX, shown the world that space exploration could be private and successful. But what if he could do the same with energy? What if he could reframe the idea of renewable energy, turning it from a mere solution to a movement? He picked up his phone and dialed the number that had, in many ways, helped shape his life and career. "Gwyn," Musk said when Shotwell answered, "I have an idea. We're going to make energy cool." The plan was audacious, but that was exactly how Musk liked it. A few days later, Musk and his team gathered at Tesla's headquarters. They had invited a small group of influential business leaders, environmental activists, and tech innovators, people who could help spread the message once they had heard it. Musk had long been used to the skepticism of investors and the media, but today, he wasn't worried about doubters. He was on a mission. As the attendees filed into the sleek, glass-walled conference room, Musk stood in front of a massive screen, his hands clasped behind his back. His face was calm, but there was a certain intensity to his eyes. "We're on the brink of something monumental," Musk began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "The world has been dependent on fossil fuels for centuries. But the truth is, we have the technology to change that right now. And I'm not talking about making incremental progress. I'm talking about a full-scale revolution in how the world produces, stores, and consumes energy." He clicked a button, and the screen behind him lit up with bold visuals of solar farms, wind turbines, electric vehicles, and Tesla's energy storage solutions. The room fell silent, the audience captivated by the images of the future Musk was describing. Tesla has been a leader in electric vehicles. Solar City has been pushing the envelope on solar power. But now, we need to go further. We need to connect all of these technologies, not just to create an alternative energy source, but to reimagine how we power the planet. Imagine a world where every building, every car, every factory is powered by clean, sustainable energy. A world where fossil fuels are phased out entirely. He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in. The group in the room was beginning to understand that Musk wasn't just talking about another tech breakthrough. This was a vision of the future, a vision in which renewable energy wasn't an afterthought or a niche market, but the very foundation of the global economy. To make this happen, Musk continued, we need more than just Tesla and Solar City. We need everyone on board. We need governments to support us. We need businesses to invest. And we need the public to believe that this is the future, not just a dream. He turned to Gwyn Shotwell, who was seated at the back of the room. "Gwyn, let's talk about the big picture. What we're building here is bigger than anything we've ever done. This isn't just a market for clean energy. This is the next industrial revolution. We need to create the infrastructure that can support this on a global scale. The world needs something to rally behind." Shotwell stood up, clearly on the same page. "Exactly. The world needs leadership, and the time to act is now. The technology is there. The consumers are ready. It's about creating a movement, a global initiative that gets people excited about clean energy, not just as an alternative, but as the way forward." Musk nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. They could build a global network of energy infrastructure, combining Tesla's battery technology, Solar City's solar panels, and the electric vehicles from his other companies. It could be the world's first fully integrated, renewable energy system. But it wasn't just about the technology, it was about framing the issue in a way that would excite people. They needed to show that switching to clean energy wasn't just about saving the environment. It was about creating a better, more sustainable future for everyone. It had to be cool. It had to be desirable. "Here's what we do," Musk said, turning back to the crowd. "We start by connecting communities, cities, and countries with decentralized energy systems. The goal is to eliminate energy poverty and reduce reliance on centralized grids, which are both outdated and inefficient. Think about the possibilities. No more blackouts, no more reliance on fossil fuels, and a world where every person has access to clean, affordable energy. The group exchanged glances. They could see it. The vision was becoming clearer. This wasn't just a business strategy, it was a global mission. We need to take this vision public, Musk added. We need a campaign, something that resonates with people on an emotional level. A call to action. A movement that shows the world that the time for change is now. For the next few weeks, Musk and his team worked tirelessly. They put together an ambitious media campaign, crafting powerful advertisements that would air globally. They featured not only the technology, but the people who would benefit from it. Families in developing nations, young entrepreneurs, students, and activists. It wasn't just a technological revolution they were selling. It was a chance for people to be part of something greater than themselves. The media blitz was soon underway. Musk gave interviews to major news outlets, appearing on primetime television and global podcasts. He spoke passionately about the need for immediate action on climate change and how clean energy was the key to the future. As expected, the reactions were mixed. Some hailed him as a visionary. Others labeled him a dreamer. But the conversations had started. The world was beginning to pay attention. As the months passed, Tesla's stock price began to rise, and SolarCity saw a surge in interest. People were beginning to understand that Musk wasn't just selling electric cars or solar panels. He was offering a future where energy wasn't a commodity controlled by corporations or governments, but a free and abundant resource for all. One morning, as Musk sat in his office, reviewing the results of the campaign, he received a call. It was from Oliver. Elon, the voice on the other end of the line said, "I've been following what you're doing. It's impressive. But now, you need to think about how to scale it. This isn't just about changing the energy industry, it's about changing the entire system." Musk smiled, knowing that Oliver was right. The work had only just begun. What had started as a spark was now a fire, and the world was starting to feel its heat. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. What had started as a small, selective initiative soon turned into a global movement. Elon Musk had become the face of renewable energy, a symbol of innovation and, to some, a messiah for the climate-conscious generation. But as always, with success came challenges, some expected, others completely unforeseen. The first wave of Musk's campaign had struck a nerve across the world. Media outlets, social platforms, and even political leaders began to echo the core message of Musk's revolution. Clean energy wasn't just a choice. It was the only viable future. People were starting to demand change, not just from governments and corporations, but from themselves. However, the reality of implementation was more complex than any media blitz could have captured. Musk had been up against powerful forces for decades: fossil fuel giants, traditional car manufacturers, and even governments who were deeply intertwined with oil and gas industries. Now, those forces were starting to respond, and not all of them were playing by the same rules Musk had. "They're not just going to sit back and let this happen," Gwynne Shotwell said, leaning over Musk's desk. Elon nodded, his mind already in overdrive. He had been anticipating pushback. He'd had to fight tooth and nail to get Tesla off the ground, and SpaceX had faced countless skeptics. But this was bigger. This was the entire energy infrastructure of the world, and the stakes had never been higher. "We've hit a tipping point," Musk said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We've started something huge. Now we need to be prepared for the backlash." Shotwell raised her eyebrows. "You mean from the fossil fuel industry?" "Exactly," Musk replied. "They're going to fight back with everything they've got. The next phase won't just be about technology. It'll be about politics, lobbying, and creating the conditions for systemic change. We need to be ready to defend this vision and to fight for it." Weeks later, as expected, the first signs of resistance came in the form of large-scale lobbying efforts. Oil companies and traditional utility firms began to increase their pressure on government bodies, arguing that Musk's vision for a decentralized energy grid would destabilize entire economies, drive up energy prices, and put millions of jobs at risk. They began to launch ads and media campaigns designed to spread doubt about the viability of clean energy. But Musk wasn't about to back down. He knew that this battle was inevitable. He had faced critics his entire career, from doubters who said electric cars would never be mainstream to those who predicted SpaceX's collapse. And yet, here he was, still standing, still moving forward. So, Musk did what he did best. He took the fight directly to the people. Musk appeared on a global television special titled The Future of Energy, which aired simultaneously across Europe, North America, and Asia. The program was a bold step, something Musk had deliberately set up to circumvent the corporate-controlled media channels. The goal was simple: to speak directly to the global audience, unfiltered and unscripted. The audience tuned in by the millions. As the show began, Musk walked out onto a simple stage, a minimalist setup with little more than a few sleek displays and a spotlight on him. He didn't need gimmicks or flashy effects. His words were his weapon. The time for incremental change is over, Musk began, his voice clear and powerful. The world is at a crossroads, and the decision we make today will determine the future of every human being on this planet. We've been fed lies for decades. We've been told that fossil fuels are the only way forward, that clean energy is too costly, too unreliable. Well, I'm here to tell you that's simply not true. The camera zoomed in, and Musk's words echoed across the globe. Renewable energy isn't just the right choice for the environment, it's the right choice for humanity. It's cleaner, it's safer, and it's more cost-effective than anything that has come before it. And most importantly, it's a choice. We don't have to depend on the oil giants anymore. We can create a world where energy is sustainable, decentralized, and accessible to everyone. The broadcast was interrupted briefly by a video montage of people around the world, from families in rural India to tech innovators in Silicon Valley, using solar panels, wind turbines, and electric cars. The footage spoke for itself. People were already taking matters into their own hands. Musk's revolution was no longer just about technology. It was about empowering the masses. As the program ended, Musk delivered one final message. Change is hard. The road ahead will not be easy. But together, we can make it happen. We don't need permission to save our planet. We need action. And we need it now. The impact was immediate. Within days, social media was flooded with hashtags like #RenewableRevolution, #CleanEnergyNow, and #PowerTheFuture. Environmental groups hailed Musk as a hero. Young people rallied in support of the movement, organizing rallies and protests in cities around the world. Governments that had previously been hesitant began to change their tune, with leaders like Angela Merkel from Germany and Justin Trudeau from Canada expressing renewed commitment to clean energy initiatives. But the fossil fuel industry wasn't backing down. In the shadows of these global movements, oil and gas lobbyists were hard at work, trying to drown out Musk's message with their own. They funded smear campaigns, paid for negative ads, and worked behind the scenes to lobby policymakers against legislation that would accelerate the transition to renewable energy. Musk knew that if he was going to win, he had to stay ahead of the game. He wasn't just battling the oil companies. He was fighting a deeply entrenched system that spanned entire economies, politics, and cultural norms. He called another meeting with his inner circle. This time, it wasn't just his typical team. He'd brought in world-class strategists, climate scientists, and policy experts. They were going to need more than just great technology to win this fight. They were going to need a coordinated, global strategy. We have to start thinking beyond just solar panels and electric vehicles, Musk said as the team gathered around a table. We need to create a full, integrated ecosystem, a system that includes renewable energy production, storage, and distribution. We can't just have a few people installing solar panels on their roofs and calling it a revolution. We need infrastructure. We need global policy support. We need cities and governments to step up. A policy strategist from the European Union, Dr. Anna Kessel, nodded. What you're asking for is a massive rethinking of energy policy across the globe. It's not just about creating new technologies. It's about integrating those technologies into existing energy grids, establishing global standards, and aligning economic incentives with clean energy goals. Musk smiled. Exactly. We need a new set of rules for the new world. And we're going to be the ones to write them. By the end of the year, the first real signs of systemic change were beginning to appear. Several nations, led by countries like Denmark and New Zealand, had pledged to phase out fossil fuels within the next 2 decades. Cities began retrofitting their infrastructure, building smart grids, and offering incentives for homeowners and businesses to install solar panels and energy-efficient systems. But Musk knew this was just the beginning. The global energy revolution had begun, but the hardest part was still ahead. The energy revolution was no longer just a conversation. It was a battle. Elon Musk had ignited a fire that was spreading across the globe, but now the world's entrenched powers were starting to mobilize against it. What had once seemed like a movement with endless potential was now confronting its greatest challenge: how to break the old order and forge a path to the future. Musk had always been a risk-taker, but as he stood at the center of this global revolution, he understood that this moment could change everything, or it could fail catastrophically. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure to deliver was mounting. The world was watching. It started with a phone call that Musk wasn't expecting. "Mr. Musk, this is Governor Jameson from Texas." The voice on the other end said, sharp and direct. "I need to speak with you about this energy initiative of yours." Musk sat back in his chair, the weight of the conversation sinking in. Texas was the heart of America's oil industry, and Governor Jameson had made no secret of his pro-fossil fuel stance. If he was calling now, it was likely to challenge Musk's vision. "Governor," Musk replied calmly, "I assume you're calling to discuss our commitment to renewable energy." "I'm all ears." Jameson's voice was thick with disdain, but there was a hint of curiosity buried beneath it. "I don't care much for your revolution, Musk. We've been drilling for oil in this state for over a century. It's how we feed our families. It's how we power America. And now you want to come in and tell us it's all wrong?" Musk didn't flinch. "I'm not telling anyone their way of life is wrong. What I'm saying is that it's time to think about the future. We're on the brink of a new energy paradigm, one that's cleaner, cheaper, and more sustainable. Texas has the potential to be a leader in this new world." There was a long silence on the other end before the governor responded. "I've heard your speeches, Musk. I've seen your fancy ads. But when it comes to actually changing the system, well, you've got a long way to go." Musk's pulse quickened. He knew the battle was shifting from the boardroom and media outlets to political battlegrounds. Governor Jameson wasn't just speaking for himself. He represented a powerful network of interests: the oil and gas industry, powerful unions, and even energy-dependent states like Texas, Wyoming, and North Dakota. "We're not changing the system overnight," Musk replied. "But the change is coming whether you like it or not. And when it does, you can either be part of it or get left behind." The governor laughed bitterly. "You're a dreamer, Musk. But maybe that's why people like you. Let's see if your dream comes true." The call ended abruptly, but Musk was left with a sinking feeling. The conversation had confirmed what he already knew. This battle wasn't just about technology. It was about power, control, and a system that had been in place for over a century. A week later, Musk was in Washington, D.C., meeting with key senators and world leaders. The global media landscape was shifting, and governments were beginning to respond to the pressure from activists, businesses, and even their own citizens to act on climate change. But the pushback from fossil fuel industries was getting louder, and Musk needed to ensure that policy and legislation aligned with the renewable energy future he was trying to build. He sat at a long table with a group of environmental leaders, business moguls, and international representatives from across the globe. The conversation was tense, each person trying to balance their personal interests, their constituents, and the greater good. "We've heard your case, Mr. Musk," said Senator James Hardy from Montana, who had long been an ally of the coal industry. "But transitioning away from fossil fuels is going to be devastating for the working class. People will lose jobs, families will suffer, and our economy could collapse." Musk leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I don't disagree that transition is hard. It's not going to be easy, and it will require effort from all of us. But the longer we wait, the harder it will be. We're already feeling the effects of climate change. This is no longer about jobs lost. It's about jobs that can be created in clean energy, new industries, and technologies. It's about creating a world where our children don't have to worry about the air they breathe or the planet they live on." Hardy grumbled but didn't respond immediately. Instead, another voice spoke up, this one from across the Atlantic. "We've seen the results in Europe," said a representative from the European Union, a woman named Sophie Dupont. "Countries like Germany, Denmark, and Spain are already leading the way in renewable energy. They've seen economic growth and job creation. The transition isn't just possible, it's necessary. Musk nodded, recognizing the momentum building in Europe. Exactly. And if we can work together, the US can lead the way too. We have the resources, the technology, and the will. What we need is the commitment from our leaders. The room grew quieter as everyone weighed Musk's words. It was clear that the tide was turning, but how quickly and at what cost? By the time the meeting adjourned, Musk felt cautiously optimistic. While the fight was far from over, there was a new sense of urgency in the air. It wasn't just about convincing governments and businesses anymore. It was about creating a momentum that couldn't be stopped. Musk knew that if he wanted to win, he needed to do more than just build the technology and change the market. He needed to build a coalition, a global force that would push for policy changes, corporate commitments, and individual actions that would accelerate the shift to renewable energy. But it wasn't enough to win over governments. The real challenge was getting the public to buy in. After all, even if the infrastructure existed, people had to be willing to make the change themselves. That's where the second phase of the revolution would come in. Elon called Gwynne Shotwell into his office. He could see she was tired, the toll of the past few months weighing on her. "We've done a lot to push the message, but now it's time to give people something tangible," Musk said. "We need a nationwide, global campaign that isn't just about technology. It's about the people. It's about empowering them to be part of the solution." Shotwell nodded, clearly following his train of thought. "You're talking about something bigger than just advertising or policy. You want to create a movement, an energy revolution that's about more than just using clean energy." "Exactly," Musk replied. "It's about inspiring people to take action in their daily lives. It's about showing them that this change isn't just good for the planet, it's good for them. They'll be part of something bigger than themselves." They spent the next several weeks brainstorming ideas for a global campaign, something that could reach every corner of the world. The challenge was clear. They needed to engage the masses, make them feel as though they had a stake in this revolution. It wasn't enough to just offer solar panels or electric cars. It was about creating a culture of change, where renewable energy wasn't just a choice, it was the choice. As the next phase of the campaign began, the ripple effect Musk had hoped for started to take form. Governments and businesses began to follow suit, but it was the people who were driving the change. Communities started to take matters into their own hands, installing solar panels, building microgrids, and adopting electric vehicles. It was clear that this wasn't just a movement, it was a revolution, and Elon Musk was at the center of it all. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The world was beginning to shift, but Musk knew the hardest part was still ahead. Governments were talking about renewable energy, corporations were slowly aligning with the cause, and people were starting to make individual changes, but the momentum still wasn't enough to move the needle fast enough. Musk could feel it, deep down. Every victory felt incomplete until the transformation became undeniable. For now, though, the pushback from the old energy establishment was relentless. The fossil fuel giants weren't going to just sit back and let the future unfold. They were fighting back with everything they had, using every tool at their disposal. In Washington, their lobbyists were whispering in the ears of senators and congressmen, pressuring them to block any meaningful climate policy. In boardrooms, oil and gas executives were scrambling to protect their profits, funding negative campaigns designed to discredit renewable energy efforts. But for Musk, this was just another challenge to overcome. He had been up against bigger odds before. He'd turned a struggling car company into a global brand. He'd taken on the aerospace industry and won. And now he was going to do the same with the global energy market. It was a Tuesday morning when Elon Musk received an invitation that made him pause. It was from one of the world's most influential CEOs, Mitchell Clark, the chairman of the largest oil company in the world, Titan Energy. The email was succinct. "Elon, I'd like to meet. Let's talk about where the future is heading." Musk stared at the message for a moment. Clark was known for his hard-nosed business tactics and conservative views on energy. The last person he expected to engage with was someone from Titan Energy, let alone someone like Clark. But that was the world Musk had found himself in. a place where every conversation had the potential to change everything. The meeting was set for the following Thursday, in an exclusive conference room in the heart of Silicon Valley. Musk walked in, his mind already racing through possible scenarios. He wasn't sure what to expect, but Clark had proven to be a savvy businessman over the years, and there was no denying that Titan Energy was one of the biggest players in the game. Clark greeted him with a firm handshake, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Musk," he said, motioning to a seat across from him. "Please have a seat." Musk didn't waste time. "What's this about? You're not exactly a fan of my work, Mr. Clark." Clark chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "No, I suppose not. I've made my opinions clear. But let's be real here, Musk. This renewable energy push of yours is happening whether we like it or not. The question is, how do we navigate it together?" Musk raised an eyebrow. "Together?" Clark leaned back in his chair. "Look, I get it. You're all about the future, but the fact is, the transition won't be as easy as you think. And there's a lot at stake. Not just for me, but for millions of people who depend on the jobs and infrastructure that oil provides. What I'm suggesting is that we don't fight it head-on. Instead, we find a way to work together, to ease into the future." Musk felt a flicker of surprise, then suspicion. "You want to collaborate? After all the money you've spent lobbying against renewable energy?" Clark's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not saying I'm going to give up on oil, but I can't deny the world is changing, and there's room for everyone. You have the technology. We have the infrastructure. Together, we could lead the world into a new energy era." Musk paused, weighing the implications. This wasn't just a simple pitch. It was an attempt to carve a path forward that would keep the fossil fuel industry alive while allowing space for renewable energy. For Clark, it was an olive branch, a way to ensure his company had a future in a changing world. But Musk wasn't ready to give up on his vision. His entire mission had always been about disrupting industries, not coexisting with them. However, he couldn't deny that a partnership with someone like Clark could accelerate the transformation in a way that might otherwise take decades. Still, he wasn't willing to compromise on the long-term vision. "I'll be honest with you, Clark," Musk said, leaning forward. "I don't trust the old guard to make real change. The people I'm working with, engineers, scientists, innovators, they don't just want to coexist with the status quo. They want to disrupt it. And if you're serious about helping with this transition, you need to do more than just make a profit. You need to invest in the future, in clean energy, in sustainability." Clark studied him for a long moment. "And what if I told you Titan Energy could lead that charge? What if we redirected some of our resources to clean energy, solar, wind, even hydrogen? We could provide the infrastructure to make this work. I'm talking about real commitment. Would you be willing to consider it?" Musk leaned back, taking in Clark's words. It was a tempting offer. A massive corporation like Titan Energy could mobilize resources on a scale that few others could match. But Musk knew that working with someone like Clark would come with strings attached, strings that might limit the revolutionary potential of his mission. "Let me think about it," Musk said after a long pause. After the meeting, Musk's mind raced. The idea of working with Titan Energy was both intriguing and dangerous. On one hand, it could provide the kind of infrastructure and global influence that might accelerate the adoption of renewable energy. On the other hand, it would mean compromising his values. Could he trust someone like Clark, who had spent his entire career protecting an industry that was directly responsible for the world's climate crisis? In the following weeks, Musk dove deep into research, talking with his closest advisors and experts. They debated the pros and cons of the proposal, and ultimately, the answer became clear. A partnership with Titan Energy could be a powerful tool, but Musk's vision wasn't negotiable. He wasn't going to let the future of humanity be shaped by compromises that would delay the inevitable. He could work with them, but only on his terms, only if they were willing to truly commit to change. Musk called Clark back. "I'm willing to work with you," he said flatly, "but only if you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. I'm talking about serious investment in renewable technologies, solar, wind, and even space-based solar. I want to see your company take real steps to transition into the future. If you're in, we can talk." Clark's response came quickly. "Fine. I'll have our team reach out to yours to start negotiations." But you're not going to win this war alone, Musk. We'll need to bring in the others, governments, unions, and industries. Musk's eyes narrowed. I know what you're trying to do, but make no mistake, we're not negotiating the future. You either get on board with it, or you're left behind. Weeks turned into months, and the negotiations continued, but there was a subtle shift in the air. Musk had always known that change wouldn't happen overnight. But now, with Titan Energy involved, the scale of the revolution had expanded exponentially. It wasn't just Musk pushing for a new world anymore. It was everyone. Even the old powers were beginning to realize that they had to adapt, or risk being left behind. The battle for the future of energy was far from over, but the tide was beginning to turn. People, corporations, and governments were slowly coming around to the idea that the future didn't have to be a battle between old and new. It could be a fusion, if the right people were in charge. And for Elon Musk, that future was still within reach. But it was going to take more than just innovation to change the world. It was going to take courage. Courage to face the giants of the past and carve out a path to the future. Elon Musk was no stranger to navigating uncharted territory. In his career, he had disrupted industries, challenged norms, and faced down competitors. But this moment was different. This wasn't about creating something new. It was about tearing down an entrenched system that had been in place for over a century. And in that moment, working with Titan Energy seemed like the only way forward. But could he trust them to follow through? After his meeting with Mitchell Clark, Musk's mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts. He had agreed to explore the partnership, but he still didn't trust Titan Energy's motivations. The oil giants had spent decades fighting against the very changes Musk was advocating for. But Clark's offer wasn't entirely about maintaining the status quo. Clark had promised that Titan Energy would invest heavily in renewable technologies, including solar, wind, and hydrogen. Musk didn't have time to waste. The world couldn't wait for old powers to catch up, but the scale Titan Energy could offer was undeniable. Musk called a meeting with Gwynne Shotwell and other members of the Tesla leadership team. He needed to understand how to handle this new chapter. Shotwell walked in, eyes sharp as always. Gwynne, we've got an offer on the table that could change everything. Titan Energy wants to partner, Musk began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the decision. Shotwell raised an eyebrow. Titan Energy? The same company that's been actively blocking every piece of legislation that supports clean energy? Musk nodded. That's the one. Clark seems to have realized that the transition is inevitable, and he wants to help make it happen. But I'm not sure he's fully committed. He sees a chance to profit from the shift, but he's not clear on what that shift actually means for the future. Shotwell crossed her arms, thinking, I've always said it's better to be part of the change than to fight against it. But we can't afford to compromise on our principles. If we do this, we do it on our terms, and we make sure they're serious about the commitment to sustainability. That's exactly where I'm at, Musk agreed. I'm not looking to make deals just for the sake of making deals. This isn't about selling out. If they want to be part of this, they'll have to prove it, just like everyone else. The team continued to deliberate, but the decision was clear. This partnership was an opportunity that could speed up the renewable energy revolution, but they needed to ensure that Titan Energy didn't just leverage the shift for their own gain. Over the next few weeks, Musk met with Clark's team, and their lawyers pored over contracts, structuring terms that would allow the fossil fuel giant to invest in clean energy, but only under strict conditions. Titan Energy would be required to divest from coal and oil over the next decade, with clear timelines for renewable energy investments and a commitment to global carbon reduction. Tesla would provide the technology, solar panels, batteries, and energy storage systems, while Clark's company would focus on scaling them globally. The negotiations weren't easy. Titan Energy's executives were wary of giving up their profitable oil infrastructure, and Musk had to navigate their resistance. But he was relentless. He knew this deal wasn't just about money. It was about the future. A month later, the deal was signed. Musk stood in a massive conference room with Mitchell Clark, the press ready to take pictures, and representatives from governments around the world standing by. The press release announced that Titan Energy and Tesla were partnering to lead the global transition to renewable energy, with Titan Energy committing to become a net-zero carbon company by 2035. The world's media were buzzing. Clark spoke first. This is a historic moment. Today, we lay the foundation for a future where clean energy powers the world. Titan Energy will not only invest in renewable technologies, but we will also collaborate with Tesla to create new industries, new jobs, and a new way of powering our lives. Musk took the stage next. This is not just a partnership between two companies. It's a partnership between the past and the future. Titan Energy recognizes the urgent need for change, and we're here to make it happen. Together, we will push the boundaries of technology, and in doing so, we'll show the world that sustainability and profitability can coexist. The room applauded, and the cameras flashed. Musk's gut told him something had shifted. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a statement. The tide had truly started to turn. However, not everyone was celebrating. The announcement sent shockwaves through the oil and gas industry. For years, companies like Titan Energy had fought tooth and nail against the rise of renewable energy. But now, one of the largest oil companies in the world was embracing it. This change threatened the established order in ways they couldn't ignore. Behind closed doors, rival executives were furious. They called emergency meetings, strategizing their next moves. If Titan Energy was willing to pivot, it could open the door for others to follow, and that would change everything. Meanwhile, protests erupted outside the offices of some of the most powerful oil companies in the world. Environmental activists, emboldened by the new partnership, called for faster, more aggressive action to combat climate change. They weren't satisfied with Titan Energy's promises. They wanted results. At the same time, grassroots movements that had once been seen as fringe were gaining power. Social media was flooded with calls for divestment from fossil fuels and immediate action on climate change. The energy revolution wasn't just happening at the top, it was being driven by the people. Despite the external pressure, Musk remained focused. He knew the real battle was just beginning. Now that the partnership was in place, he had to deliver. Tesla's solar products, including the revolutionary solar roof, needed to be scaled faster. The company's energy storage technology needed to be deployed on a global scale, and Tesla's battery plants had to increase production capacity to meet the growing demand. Musk was up to the challenge, but he knew it wouldn't be easy. Scaling production wasn't the only challenge. Musk also had to ensure that governments and industries would support the transition. He set up meetings with top environmental leaders and political figures, pushing for new policies and incentives that would accelerate the adoption of clean energy. Governments need to make it easier for people to choose renewable energy, Musk said during one meeting with European Union leaders. The infrastructure must be there: electric vehicle charging stations, solar incentives, and grid storage systems. If we don't incentivize the transition, we're simply delaying it. As negotiations continued, the pressure on governments grew. With Titan Energy's shift toward clean energy, and with Tesla's innovations, it was becoming clear that there was no turning back. The world had reached a tipping point. By the time summer rolled around, the world was beginning to see real, tangible changes. Solar panels were sprouting on rooftops everywhere. Electric vehicles were becoming more common on the streets, and countries around the world were introducing ambitious carbon reduction goals. Even those in the fossil fuel industry were starting to hedge their bets, recognizing that a shift was coming and that they had to adapt or risk losing everything. Musk stood in front of a Tesla factory, looking out at the sea of workers assembling the next generation of solar panels. He felt a surge of pride and anticipation. This was just the beginning. The partnership between Tesla and Titan Energy wasn't just making waves in the energy sector. It was transforming the global conversation. What had seemed like a pipe dream just a few years ago was now happening at full throttle. Elon Musk felt the weight of responsibility more than ever, but with the success of the deal, he also felt something else: momentum. It had only been a few months since the press conference announcing the groundbreaking partnership, and already the landscape was shifting. Every major energy company was reevaluating its position. Some, like Shell and BP, had started making tentative moves toward clean energy, but they were still dragging their feet. Titan Energy, on the other hand, had committed to real change, and the speed at which they were implementing renewable solutions shocked even Musk. He sat at his desk late one evening, staring at a global map on his screen. The rollout of solar panels had surpassed projections in both residential and commercial sectors. Tesla's solar roof was being installed on thousands of new homes across the U.S., and the company's solar farms in the Middle East were beginning to supply power to entire cities. Meanwhile, Tesla's gigafactories were humming with activity, producing more batteries and energy storage solutions than ever before. But it wasn't just the numbers that excited him, it was the broader impact. Musk scrolled through the news. Energy companies turning to renewables in record numbers. Clean energy investment hits new highs. Countries setting ambitious carbon neutrality goals by 2040. He could feel the shift happening, like a tectonic plate moving under the surface. But, as always, the road ahead was fraught with challenges. Musk's phone buzzed, pulling him out of his reverie. It was a message from his right-hand woman, Gwynne Shotwell. "We need to talk. Urgent." Musk texted back, "Is everything okay?" "Not exactly. You're going to want to hear this in person. Conference room in 15 minutes. Musk frowned. His stomach churned slightly as he stood up from his desk. He had a lot on his plate, and an urgent message from Gwynne usually meant something serious. When he walked into the conference room, Shotwell was already there, her face unreadable. "Gwynne?" Musk asked, sitting down across from her. She didn't waste any time. "It's the markets. Wall Street's panicking." Musk's heart sank. "What happened?" "It's a combination of things. Some of it's the backlash from fossil fuel companies, but there's more. Tesla's stock prices are dropping. Not a small dip, about 20% in the last 2 weeks." Musk leaned back, thinking, "I thought we were past this. We've just made a deal with Titan. We're revolutionizing energy. What's the issue?" Shotwell sighed. "The markets aren't reacting to the long-term vision. They're focused on short-term earnings. Analysts are worried about the uncertainty around traditional energy players like Titan. The shift toward renewables is huge, but investors are scared of the disruption. They see this transition as too volatile." "Volatile," Musk repeated, his mind working quickly. "They don't see the bigger picture. They never do." Shotwell nodded. "Exactly. The long-term vision is crystal clear, but the stock market isn't designed for long-term thinking, and it's causing panic among our investors. We need to stabilize things before it gets worse." Musk ran a hand through his hair. This wasn't the first time he had faced a crisis. The Tesla stock crash back in 2018 still haunted him. But he was a different person now. He had bigger goals, bigger stakes, and a more established company behind him. He knew how to handle this. "We need to reassure the market," Musk said decisively. "It's time to do something drastic. We're going to double down on our progress. Let's announce the next phase of the energy revolution. Let's show them that we're not just talking about a future, we're building it now." The next day, Musk called a press conference. Standing before a crowd of reporters, investors, and journalists from around the world, he took the podium with his usual calm demeanor, but there was an undeniable energy in his eyes. This was a pivotal moment. He could feel the eyes of the world on him, and he was ready to seize it. "The future of energy is happening right now," Musk began, "and Tesla is at the forefront. We're not waiting for the world to change. We're making it change. Today, I'm announcing that Tesla will be accelerating the construction of the world's largest solar farm, located in the Sahara Desert. It will provide power for millions of homes across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa." A murmur spread through the room. This wasn't just a new solar installation. This was global. And the location itself was jaw-dropping. The Sahara Desert was one of the sunniest places on Earth, and tapping into its potential could change the game entirely. Musk continued, "This solar farm will be the cornerstone of a new energy grid that will connect regions across continents, providing cheap, clean, and reliable energy to places that need it most. This is just the first step. We're going to expand this project globally, with new solar and wind installations all over the world. And we're going to do it faster than anyone thought possible." As the announcement hit the airwaves, Tesla's stock began to recover. Investors, impressed by the audacity of Musk's plan, began to see past the short-term panic. The next day, Tesla's stock prices surged back by nearly 10%. It wasn't enough to completely stabilize things yet, but it was a sign that the world was starting to believe in the vision again. Musk didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Tesla ramped up its production of solar technology and storage batteries, with an eye towards scaling it to meet the rising demand. The Sahara project was already in motion, with initial groundwork being laid for what Musk hoped would be the largest solar farm the world had ever seen. But there were other, smaller projects in the works as well, off-grid solar systems for communities in Africa, India, and South America. These were the types of projects that could bring real, immediate change to people's lives. At the same time, Titan Energy was working with Tesla to integrate their vast energy infrastructure with clean energy sources. The first joint solar farm, located in the Middle East, was expected to go online by the end of the year, and the pair was already planning new projects in Asia and South America. The goal was to make renewable energy the dominant power source in less than a decade, and they were moving quickly. Musk's focus had never wavered, but the mounting pressure on him was becoming more evident. Every day felt like a race against time. He was trying to build the future while keeping the present from collapsing under its own weight. The stock market was one thing, but there were other forces working behind the scenes as well. Traditional energy companies were fighting harder than ever to maintain their dominance. Lobbyists continued to flood government halls, trying to slow down renewable energy policies. And environmental groups, while supportive of Tesla's efforts, were beginning to demand even faster action. One afternoon, as Musk sat in his office staring at blueprints for the Sahara Solar Project, he received an unexpected call. It was from the President of the United States, who had been following the progress of Tesla's energy revolution. "Musk," the president said, "I've been getting some pressure from various groups about the speed of the transition. The public wants change, but they also want it to be affordable. The cost of renewable infrastructure is still a concern for many people. We need a plan to accelerate adoption on a mass scale." Musk had heard these concerns before, but now they were coming from the highest level of government. "Mr. President," Musk replied, "the cost of renewable energy is already dropping faster than anyone predicted. The more we invest in the infrastructure, the more affordable it becomes. But to make it truly global, we need support. We need to put policies in place that make it easier for people to transition to clean energy, tax incentives, subsidies for solar panels, and an overhaul of outdated grid systems. We need to act fast." The president paused for a moment. "You've got my support, Musk. Let's get the ball rolling. I'll make sure the White House pushes for the necessary policy changes." It was a win for Musk, but it was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The future was still uncertain, and the road ahead was filled with hurdles. But for the first time in a long time, Musk felt a flicker of hope. The world was starting to see what was possible, and it was beginning to move in the right direction. The ripple effects of Musk's Sahara Solar Farm announcement were far-reaching. It wasn't just the markets that were reacting. Governments, activists, and industries worldwide were watching closely. In a world where climate change was becoming more urgent by the day, the solar farm in the heart of the Sahara Desert was more than just an energy project. It was a symbol. A symbol of what could be achieved if humanity committed to solving the crisis head-on. Elon Musk sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, his gaze fixed on the news streaming across his computer screen. Headlines from across the globe were covering the news. Musk's Sahara Solar Farm, the dawn of a new energy era. Global leaders backed Tesla's vision for solar-powered future. Titan Energy takes a bold step into clean energy with Tesla's vision. Musk had long since grown accustomed to the constant media attention, but this felt different. This was the kind of moment he had worked toward his entire life. A moment when people stopped seeing renewable energy as a luxury or an afterthought and began to recognize it as the future, a future they could no longer afford to ignore. His phone buzzed, an incoming call from Mitchell Clark. "Hey Elon," Clark's voice came through. "I've been tracking the media coverage on this. You've created a tidal wave." Musk leaned back in his chair. "It's just the beginning, Mitchell. We've got a long way to go. But the key thing now is keeping that momentum. The Sahara Solar Farm is just one piece of the puzzle. The real challenge is scaling this up globally." Clark chuckled. "You don't need to tell me that. Titan Energy is fully committed. We've already started discussions with our partners in Asia, Africa, and Europe. The appetite for renewable energy has never been higher." "I hope you're right," Musk said. "The challenge will be getting governments to act. The public wants change now, but policy and infrastructure need to catch up." The following week, Musk traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with political leaders. His goal was clear: to ensure that the U.S. government was fully on board with the renewable energy revolution. He was scheduled to meet with several influential lawmakers and members of the Biden administration, including the Secretary of Energy and the Vice President. Musk knew this was crucial. Without governmental backing, even the most ambitious projects would stall in the face of regulatory hurdles and policy inertia. The meeting was set for a private conference room in the White House. As Musk entered, the atmosphere was electric. Every person in the room understood the gravity of the discussion. The room was filled with some of the country's most powerful decision-makers, each one holding a piece of the puzzle that could accelerate or impede the transition to clean energy. The Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, greeted Musk with a firm handshake. "Elon, it's good to see you again. We've been following Tesla's progress closely." Musk nodded. "Thank you. But right now, it's not just Tesla's progress. It's about a global transition to clean energy. And for that to happen, we need to act faster. The Sahara Project is a big step, but we need policies that make it easier to scale solar, wind, and battery storage everywhere." Granholm took a seat at the table. "We're aware of the urgency. The Biden administration has set ambitious climate goals, but we need support from both sides of the aisle to make it happen. Some are still resistant to policies that disrupt the current energy model." Musk didn't hesitate. "I understand the politics, but the economics are clear. Clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels now, and it's only going to get cheaper. The longer we delay, the more we risk. This isn't just a climate issue, it's an economic issue. The renewable energy sector will create millions of jobs, but we need to make the transition smoother." The vice president, seated next to Granholm, spoke up. "What would you need from us, Elon? What specific policies would accelerate this transition?" Musk didn't flinch. "We need three things. First, we need stronger tax incentives for companies that are investing in renewables. Second, we need infrastructure investment, billions of dollars in electric grid upgrades and electric vehicle charging stations. And third, we need policies that incentivize battery storage development. Without proper storage, renewable energy won't be able to scale. Without these, we'll be stuck in the past." Granholm nodded thoughtfully. "We'll push for this. I can't promise anything today, but we're committed to pushing through legislation that supports renewable energy, and we'll back efforts to build out infrastructure." Musk smiled. "I'm not here to make promises, only to make change happen. But this is the kind of commitment that will make the difference. The sooner we get the policy framework in place, the sooner we can start deploying these technologies at the scale we need." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the European Union was also feeling the pressure to accelerate its clean energy transition. In Brussels, leaders from multiple EU member states were holding an emergency summit to discuss how to integrate the massive increase in renewable energy into the continent's aging energy grid. Musk's visit to Washington had been just one piece of the puzzle. Now, he was preparing for a high-stakes trip to Brussels. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Tesla and Titan Energy were to succeed, the EU would need to back massive investments in renewable energy infrastructure. Otherwise, Europe would remain dependent on fossil fuels for much longer than anyone wanted. Arriving in Brussels, Musk met with EU officials at a summit hosted by the European Commission. He was joined by Mitchell Clark, who had flown in to lend Titan Energy's support to the discussion. Musk's presentation was a call to action, a vision of a future where Europe was powered by clean, renewable energy. "Europe has a unique opportunity," Musk said, addressing the room full of leaders and policymakers. "With the Sahara solar farm and projects like it, you have access to abundant solar energy. But for that energy to reach homes and businesses across Europe, the grid needs to be modernized. And that means investment. Without it, we risk missing the opportunity to leap ahead." Clark added, "Titan Energy is committed to supporting these efforts. But we need the EU's backing. We need fast-track approvals for large-scale renewable energy projects. And we need the regulatory framework that allows for the integration of clean energy into the grid." The room was tense as the officials absorbed the weight of the proposal. This wasn't a small ask. It was an entire transformation of the energy landscape. But Musk's passion and conviction were undeniable. After a long pause, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, spoke. "We understand the urgency. Europe has made progress in renewable energy, but we need to move faster. We will work with Tesla and Titan Energy to accelerate the transition." The political will is here, but we will need cooperation from all sides. Musk nodded, knowing that this was the beginning of a long but necessary battle. This is a global issue, he said. It requires global cooperation, and the only way to succeed is by acting fast. The next few months saw unprecedented collaboration between Tesla, Titan Energy, and governments across the world. Musk's vision of a sustainable future began to take shape in tangible ways. Large-scale solar farms were approved in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. The Sahara project was moving ahead at a breakneck pace, and Tesla's gigafactories were ramping up production to meet the demand for batteries and storage systems. But while Musk was focused on his global initiatives, he knew there would be more challenges ahead. There was still the lingering resistance from traditional energy companies who would stop at nothing to protect their monopoly. And the public pressure was mounting. Activists were pushing for faster action, and every day seemed to bring new headlines demanding quicker results. As Musk reflected on the progress, he couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. But one thing was clear. The world was waking up. Clean energy was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality, and it was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. The impact of Elon Musk's global energy revolution was starting to take root, but as his projects expanded, so too did the resistance. Musk had seen it before. Powerful forces that would stop at nothing to preserve the status quo. This time, however, the stakes were higher. The world was watching, and the fight for a sustainable future had just begun. Musk sat in his office late one evening, scrolling through his tablet. News articles, reports, and social media updates flooded in. Some encouraging, some not so much. The Sahara solar project was progressing ahead of schedule, and Tesla's renewable energy solutions were being implemented worldwide. But then, there were the critics. In the span of a few months, Tesla had gone from being a rebellious outsider to a central figure in the global energy conversation. While many applauded Musk's efforts, there were others who felt threatened. The fossil fuel industry was in turmoil. In the US, oil and gas lobbyists were pouring millions of dollars into campaigns to slow the clean energy transition. In Europe, traditional energy companies were pushing for policies that would delay the deployment of renewable energy at scale. Musk leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The backlash was expected, but it was starting to become more personal. He had heard whispers that certain high-powered individuals were trying to discredit him publicly. Reports of sabotage on Tesla's supply chains had surfaced, and there were rumors of coordinated disinformation campaigns aimed at undermining his credibility. But Musk wasn't someone to back down from a challenge. In fact, he thrived on it. It was time to turn up the heat. A few days later, Musk flew to London for a high-profile conference on renewable energy. The event was being held at the O2 Arena, a massive venue where leaders in politics, business, and technology would come together to discuss the future of energy. The agenda was packed, with speeches from global leaders, CEOs of major corporations, and environmental activists. But Musk had a different goal. He wasn't just there to speak about Tesla's achievements. He was there to confront his critics head-on. As he took the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Musk, ever the showman, had cultivated a presence that could command attention. But today, he was not just Elon Musk, the visionary CEO. Today, he was the figurehead of a global movement. "Thank you," Musk said, pausing as the applause died down. "It's an honor to be here. We're standing at the brink of something incredible. We have a choice: continue down a path of environmental destruction or embrace the clean energy revolution that is not just inevitable. It's already happening." The crowd listened intently as Musk continued. "We have the technology, the resources, and the drive to transition away from fossil fuels. The Sahara Solar Project is just one example of what's possible. But I've been hearing a lot of resistance lately, from the same groups who profited from the old system. I'm here to tell you, we won't let them stand in our way. We are in this for the long haul." A ripple of excitement ran through the crowd. The message was clear. Musk wasn't backing down, and he expected others to join him in pushing for real change. But what he didn't expect was the wave of backlash that would follow. The day after the conference, Musk received a call from Mitchell Clark. The tension in Clark's voice was unmistakable. "Elon, we've got a situation," Clark began. "It's worse than we thought." The fossil fuel industry is hitting back harder than ever. There's a coordinated smear campaign against you. They've managed to get media outlets to question Tesla's environmental record, even tying it to allegations of unsafe labor practices. Musk's eyes narrowed. I knew it was coming. What else? They're not stopping at just media manipulation. There's talk of legislation being introduced in multiple states to make it harder for companies like Tesla to get incentives for renewable energy projects. They're even trying to block solar incentives in some parts of Europe. They're not playing fair, Elon. Musk sat up straighter. Of course they aren't. It's all about control. But we're going to fight back. We can't afford to lose this battle, not now. We need to call them out, and we need to do it publicly. Clark agreed. We'll be ready. But this is going to get uglier before it gets better. A few days later, Musk held a press conference in Los Angeles, flanked by top Tesla and Titan Energy executives. The media, hungry for his latest words, descended upon the room. Ladies and gentlemen, Musk began. I've been in this game long enough to know that when you push for real change, you're going to face opposition. But I also know this. We will not be deterred by lies, smear tactics, or outdated systems. Tesla and Titan Energy are leading the charge toward a cleaner, more sustainable future. And if the fossil fuel industry wants to fight us, then let's have that fight. But it will be a fight for the future of humanity. The room was silent for a moment before reporters began shouting questions. Musk didn't flinch. We're facing a systemic issue. For too long, the world has been held hostage by a few powerful interests. But the facts are clear. Clean energy is not just possible. It's the only path forward. Anyone who stands in the way of that will be held accountable. As Musk's words reverberated through the media, the backlash grew even louder. Conservative news outlets began airing segments claiming that Musk's renewable energy push was a disruption to the economy. Opinion pieces accused him of being a tech mogul with too much power. Yet despite the negative coverage, Musk was resolute. He wasn't just fighting for Tesla. He was fighting for the future of the planet. Behind the scenes, the battle raged on. Lobbyists for fossil fuel companies were working overtime to sway lawmakers, while activists were rallying behind Tesla's push for policy change. In Washington, D.C., the pressure was mounting. Musk's calls to action were getting more attention, but the opposition was just as vocal. The political landscape was becoming increasingly polarized on the issue of renewable energy, with some lawmakers embracing Musk's vision and others fiercely opposing it. One afternoon, Musk received a call from Gwynne Shotwell. Elon, Shotwell said, I've got news from Capitol Hill. There's a major pushback against the legislation we've been working on. Some key lawmakers are starting to cave to the pressure from the oil and gas lobby. They're threatening to block incentives for Tesla's solar and battery projects unless we make some compromises. Musk was silent for a moment, weighing his options. We can't compromise on this. The future of the planet is at stake. I agree, Shotwell replied, but we need to be strategic. If we push too hard, we risk losing everything. Musk knew she was right, but for him, there was no turning back. The world had reached a tipping point. It was now or never. As the months went on, the battle between Musk's clean energy revolution and the entrenched fossil fuel industry intensified. Lawsuits, protests, media attacks, and political lobbying became a constant part of the landscape. But amidst all the chaos, one thing remained certain. The global shift toward renewable energy was happening. The question was no longer if the world would change. It was how fast it would happen and how much resistance it would face along the way. The tension between Musk's clean energy revolution and the powerful forces of the fossil fuel industry reached a fever pitch. As the global fight for sustainable energy became more entrenched, Musk found himself not just battling for Tesla and Titan Energy, but for the future of humanity itself. Musk stood in the center of the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada, overseeing the final stages of production for a new generation of high-capacity batteries. The factory floor buzzed with activity, the sound of machines humming in perfect harmony as the latest models rolled off the assembly line. But despite the impressive progress, Musk's mind was elsewhere. His phone buzzed on the desk next to him. It was Mitchell Clark. Elon, we've got an urgent problem, Clark's voice crackled through. Musk stepped away from the production line, his gaze sharp. What's going on? We just got word from Europe. There's a new bill moving through the EU Parliament that could put a major halt to large-scale renewable energy projects. It's backed by several powerful lobbyists, including the oil and gas sector. They're framing it as a national security issue, claiming that reliance on foreign energy could jeopardize Europe's stability. They're pushing for more local energy production, which means they're targeting solar and wind initiatives. Musk's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I feared. It's a classic move to slow down the transition and maintain control over the old energy systems. We can't let this pass. Not now. Clark sighed. I'm afraid it's going to be a tough fight. They've got political leverage and plenty of money behind them. The media campaign against renewable energy is already in full swing. A few days later, Musk was on a private jet, heading to Brussels. The time for speeches and press conferences had passed. Now, it was time to use the full weight of his influence to challenge the fossil fuel lobby directly. As the plane descended toward Brussels, Musk reflected on the magnitude of the situation. The Sahara solar farm was already beginning to supply energy to parts of Europe, but if the EU passed these new regulations, everything could grind to a halt. If he didn't succeed, billions of dollars in investments, along with the progress toward a renewable future, could be wiped out. The jet touched down at Brussels airport, and Musk's team was waiting for him. The plan was simple: meet with key European leaders, particularly those who were already sympathetic to Tesla's clean energy goals. He would make his case for why the EU needed to stay the course. The future of Europe, and possibly the world, depended on it. Musk entered the European Parliament building with a sense of purpose. As he walked down the long corridors, flanked by security and aides, he couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the modernity of the building and the centuries-old architecture that surrounded it. The European Union, like the building itself, was a mix of tradition and progress, a balancing act that would be put to the test in the coming days. His first meeting was with Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. The two had met several times before, but this time the stakes were higher. Musk's heart raced as he entered her office, but he kept his composure. "Ursula," he said, extending his hand, "it's good to see you again. I'm afraid we're facing an urgent issue." Von der Leyen nodded grimly. "I've heard. The bill is gaining traction, and there are some serious concerns. The fossil fuel lobby is strong, and they're pushing hard. We need to figure out how to respond without causing a political crisis." Musk didn't mince words. If this bill passes, we lose our chance to accelerate the energy transition. The entire purpose of the European Green Deal will be undermined. And more importantly, it'll set a precedent for other nations to follow. We'll be back at square one. It's not just a matter of policy. It's a matter of survival. Von der Leyen looked thoughtful. "I agree with you. But you have to understand, there are real fears, especially in Eastern Europe. They're concerned about being too reliant on external sources of energy. How do we address those fears without retreating from our green energy goals?" Musk leaned forward, his eyes intense. "The answer is clear: investment in infrastructure. We need to double down on renewable energy and the technologies that make it work, like battery storage and grid modernization. Europe can produce its own clean energy and export it to the world. We've already shown that solar and wind can provide an abundance of power. The Sahara project is proof of that. But we need the political will to make it happen." Von der Leyen was quiet for a moment, her fingers tapping on the desk. "You're asking for a massive commitment, Elon, but I hear what you're saying. The challenge is how to sell this to the public." "Public support is there," Musk replied, his voice steady. "All we need is leadership, and Europe has the opportunity to lead the world. This is more than energy policy. It's about securing Europe's future in the 21st century. Von der Leyen looked at him with a mixture of determination and apprehension. "I'll do what I can, but I'll need your help. We have to get the right public figures on our side, and we'll need to combat the misinformation campaign. This won't be easy." Musk nodded. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. I've never been afraid of a fight, and this is a fight we can't afford to lose." The next few days were a blur of meetings and negotiations. Musk met with lawmakers, attended dinners with European business leaders, and delivered speeches at various venues. He was relentless in pushing the message that renewable energy wasn't just an environmental issue. It was an economic and national security issue. But the opposition was equally fierce. The fossil fuel lobby had mobilized its forces, and Musk could feel the pressure mounting. The media campaign against him was growing louder, with reports accusing Tesla of overhyping its capabilities and downplaying the environmental costs of production. Some even suggested that Musk was using his influence to create a monopoly on clean energy. Musk didn't let it faze him. He knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. The facts were on his side. He pushed forward, refusing to back down, rallying the support of key allies in government and business. The final vote on the controversial energy bill was set to take place in just a few days. The atmosphere in Brussels was electric with tension. Supporters of the bill were confident, but Musk was equally determined to see it blocked. On the night before the vote, Musk attended a final meeting with von der Leyen and other key political figures. As they sat around a large conference table, the weight of the moment settled in. "The vote tomorrow could change everything," von der Leyen said, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "If we lose this, it will be a major setback. For Europe, for Tesla, for clean energy everywhere." Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "We're fighting for the future. I know we've got the facts on our side, but we also need to make sure that people understand what's at stake. This is about more than just energy. It's about the future of the planet." The next day, the vote was held. Musk watched from a private room as the results came in. The tension was unbearable. Finally, the announcement came. The bill had been defeated. The room erupted in applause. Musk exhaled, a sense of relief washing over him. This was a victory, but he knew it was just one battle in a much larger war. The fossil fuel lobby would regroup, and the fight for clean energy would continue. But for now, Musk allowed himself a moment of triumph. The future was still within reach. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Musk's triumph in Europe was hard-won, but as he sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, he couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. The fossil fuel industry, bruised but not defeated, was regrouping. Musk knew that what had just happened in Brussels was a mere skirmish in a global war that was still in its early stages. The stakes had grown too high, and the forces arrayed against him were more powerful than ever. The phone rang sharply, pulling Musk from his thoughts. It was Mitchell Clark, his trusted chief of strategy. "Elon, we've got a situation," Clark said, his voice clipped. "We've just learned that some of our largest investors in the energy sector are starting to backpedal. They're concerned about the political risks. They're afraid the pushback against Tesla's green energy projects could get worse." Musk leaned forward, his face tightening. "I knew this was coming. What are they saying specifically?" "Some of the big institutional investors, pension funds, energy hedge funds, they're getting cold feet. There's pressure on them to pull out. They're citing increasing regulatory hurdles, and there's talk about slowing down their funding for Titan energy and solar initiatives." Musk's fingers drummed on the desk as he processed the news. It was a critical blow. These investors had been the cornerstone of his global expansion plans. Losing them now could stall the progress he had worked so hard to build. What's the strategy to keep them in? "We need to show them the long-term benefits, both financially and geopolitically. I've already set up some meetings with them, but I think you need to weigh in. We need to remind them of the potential for growth. But we also need to address the risks head-on." Musk was silent for a moment. Then, he spoke with quiet resolve. "Let's move forward with those meetings. I'll take it from here." That evening, Musk found himself at a private dinner with a group of powerful investors. They were seated at an exclusive restaurant in San Francisco, surrounded by lush greenery and the faint hum of conversation. Musk could tell right away that the mood was tense. The investors, men and women in their mid-40s to early 60s, were not the type to be easily swayed by emotion or rhetoric. They wanted facts, numbers, and a clear path to profitability. Musk began speaking, his voice calm but firm. "I understand your concerns. The political climate is volatile, and the regulatory hurdles are higher than we'd like. But let's put it into perspective. The transition to renewable energy is inevitable. We've seen it play out in every industry that has ever been disrupted. The question is not if it will happen, but how fast." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. Tesla and Titan Energy aren't just about solar panels and electric cars. We're talking about a fundamental shift in the way the world produces and consumes energy. And make no mistake, this shift is going to make early adopters a lot of money. One of the investors, a woman named Rebecca Jensen, raised an eyebrow. And what about the political and regulatory risk, Elon? You can't ignore that. You're pushing up against some of the biggest forces in the world. The fossil fuel lobby isn't going to sit back and let you win this fight. Musk's eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward. I know the risks. I've been facing them since the day I launched Tesla. But here's the truth. The tide is turning. The world is waking up to the reality that we can't keep burning fossil fuels. And the government support, especially in the US and Europe, is only going to grow. Another investor, a man named Harold Benton, interjected, "But what if it doesn't? What if the regulations get tougher? What if the public backlash grows? What happens then?" Musk's voice was steady, unwavering. "Then we adapt. That's what we do best. But what I can tell you is this. If you're not investing in clean energy right now, you're going to get left behind. The world is changing, and if we're not leading that change, we'll be playing catch-up." He let the silence hang in the air for a moment, before adding, "I'm not asking you to follow blindly. I'm asking you to look at the data. Tesla has been growing steadily. The energy storage business is expanding. And our upcoming projects, like the solar roof and the electric semi, are going to revolutionize the market." Rebecca Jensen was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing his words. Finally, she spoke. "I'll give you one thing, Elon. You believe in what you're doing. You've convinced me on that. But I need to see more action. We need a clear path forward with fewer roadblocks." Musk smiled slightly. "And that's exactly what we'll deliver. The roadblocks are temporary, but the future is permanent." The meeting continued late into the evening, but Musk could sense the shift in the room. By the time they finished dessert and coffee, it was clear that the investors were on board, at least for the moment. They hadn't fully committed to an expansion of their funding, but they were no longer pulling back. As he left the restaurant, Musk knew that the battle was far from over. The fossil fuel industry was relentless, and the political landscape would continue to shift. But one thing had become clear. The future was on his side. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Musk's team ramped up efforts to expand solar projects across the US, Europe, and parts of Asia. Despite the occasional sabotage or legal battle, the momentum was undeniable. Tesla's battery storage solutions were being adopted at a faster rate than anticipated, and the company's stock began to climb again, bolstered by renewed investor confidence. But not everyone was happy with the changes. There were whispers in the halls of power that the battle for clean energy was about to take a darker turn. One afternoon, as Musk was reviewing the latest developments on the energy front, he received a call from his old friend, Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter. "Elon, I've been keeping tabs on everything you're doing with the clean energy push," Dorsey said. "And I'm impressed, but there's something you need to know. I've been hearing chatter about a coordinated effort to discredit you on a global scale. They're not just hitting you with negative media. They're going to try and make you the scapegoat for everything wrong with the renewable energy transition. It's going to get ugly." Musk's heart skipped a beat. He had suspected something like this was coming, but hearing it from Dorsey made it all too real. "I know it's coming, Jack," Musk replied, "but I'm not going to back down. If I've learned anything in this fight, it's that you don't win by playing it safe. We go all in, and we make sure the truth gets out there." Dorsey was silent for a moment. "Just be careful, Elon. They won't play fair. They'll do whatever it takes." As Musk hung up the phone, he stared out the window at the sprawling campus of Tesla headquarters. The clean energy revolution was moving forward, but the path ahead was fraught with danger. He had already lost count of how many times the odds had been stacked against him. But he had always believed that the world's greatest challenges also presented its greatest opportunities. And this was no different. The forces aligned against him would stop at nothing to maintain the status quo. But Musk wasn't about to let that stop him. The future of the planet and the future of his companies depended on the choices he made in the coming days. It was time to fight back. Elon Musk stood at the edge of his sleek, modern office, staring out at the Bay Area skyline. The early morning sun bathed the glass buildings in a golden hue, But the promise of a new day did little to ease the tight knot of tension in his chest. The victory in Brussels was a distant memory now. He had faced the fossil fuel lobby before, but something felt different this time. The opposition wasn't just about profits and politics anymore. It was personal. Musk had always been a target of the powerful. Now, those forces had stepped up their game, and they were playing for keeps. The day after his conversation with Jack Dorsey, Musk's fears started to materialize. A coordinated smear campaign against Tesla had begun in the media. The attacks weren't just aimed at the company's products. They were aimed at him personally. His commitment to renewable energy was being twisted into a narrative of corporate greed, manipulation, and unsustainable practices. In one prominent article published by a major financial outlet, the headline screamed, "Elon Musk's Green Energy Empire. A House of Cards?" The piece alleged that Musk had exaggerated the environmental benefits of Tesla's solar panels, pointing to faulty data and unsubstantiated claims from critics within the scientific community. It painted a picture of Musk as a visionary gone rogue, someone so consumed with his own ambition that he was willing to risk the future of the planet for personal gain. Musk knew that the attacks weren't coming from the media alone. There was a larger force at play, an intricate web of fossil fuel executives, rival tech companies, and even some disillusioned former allies who had turned against him. The war he was fighting had just escalated. A few hours later, Musk met with his senior team at Tesla's Palo Alto headquarters. The energy in the room was somber, and he could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on everyone. He had always been the calm in the storm, but today, even he struggled to keep his composure. "Are we going to let them get away with this?" Musk asked, his voice laced with urgency. A long silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. Finally, one of his executives, Sarah Park, spoke up. "Elon, it's bad. The media storm is only getting stronger. And now, we're seeing a wave of misinformation online. The narrative they're pushing is that Tesla is exploiting the public and that our solar technology is far less efficient than we're claiming." Musk stood up and paced across the room. "We can't let them control the narrative. I've built this company on the truth. The facts are on our side. We've been transparent about our technology, about the challenges we face, and about the future we're trying to build. But if we don't push back now, we'll lose everything." Park nodded. "We're already seeing stock dips. And worse, our credibility is starting to take a hit with some of our longtime investors. We need a plan, fast." Musk's eyes sharpened. "What's the immediate strategy?" "We need to address the attacks head-on," Park replied. "A press conference, a detailed rebuttal, something that will show the public that Tesla is still on track. But it has to come from you, Elon. People still trust you." Musk ran a hand through his hair. The pressure was mounting, but this was the kind of challenge he thrived on. The truth, once revealed, would stand stronger than any attack. "I'll do it," he said. "Get me on every news outlet. We're going to hit them with the facts." That afternoon, Musk stood before a live audience at a press conference in Tesla's headquarters. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and a palpable sense of anticipation. Musk, ever the strategist, had planned the speech carefully. He would counter each of the media's accusations with irrefutable evidence. He had seen this before. He had been through media wars, regulatory battles, and public scrutiny. This time would be no different. He stepped up to the microphone and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I know there's been a lot of chatter recently about Tesla and our clean energy mission. And, as usual, it's filled with inaccuracies, distortions, and downright lies. Let's set the record straight." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, making eye contact with reporters who had written the most damaging articles. Tesla's mission has always been simple: to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. We're not just making electric cars, we're building the future. A future powered by renewable energy. A future that doesn't rely on fossil fuels, that doesn't harm our planet. He continued, his voice steady. "I'm aware that some critics have claimed that we've overstated the environmental impact of our solar panels. Let me be clear. Our solar technology is as efficient and sustainable as any system available today. We've invested billions into refining our products, and every improvement brings us closer to a world where clean energy is the default, not the exception. Musk leaned forward slightly. And as for the accusations that we're just in it for the money, well, that's laughable. Tesla's mission is not about profit, it's about progress. Yes, we're a business, but we're a business with a purpose. We're taking on the biggest industries in the world because we know that the status quo is unsustainable. We're doing what others aren't willing to do. Challenging the norm, disrupting the old systems, and making a better future possible. He turned to face the cameras, speaking directly into them. If you want to criticize Tesla, criticize our technology. Criticize our products. But don't attack us for doing what's right. If you want to protect the old ways, if you want to keep fueling the status quo, then fine. But don't call us greedy when we're working to save the planet. We have nothing to apologize for. As he finished, the room was silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. Musk had delivered the message with a level of confidence and passion that was unmistakable. He could see a shift in the reporters' eyes, some of them even nodding in agreement. The narrative had begun to change, but Musk knew that this was just the first step. As the press conference ended, he was bombarded with questions. Some were hostile, others more neutral, but Musk's calm demeanor seemed to catch everyone off guard. The attacks on Tesla's credibility were not over, but the company had weathered the first storm. In the days that followed, the media storm began to subside. The story no longer held the same fire it once had, and the public was slowly regaining trust in Tesla. Musk, ever vigilant, wasn't about to relax. The forces aligned against him had seen his resilience, but they hadn't yet given up. The shadow of doubt that had been cast over his vision would take time to fully lift. And then, as if on cue, another crisis emerged. A new report surfaced. This time, it wasn't about Tesla. It was about the broader push for renewable energy, and more specifically, the ambitious Sahara Solar project. The report, sourced from anonymous environmental groups and some former Tesla engineers, accused Musk's desert-based solar initiative of causing irreparable ecological damage. It claimed that the large-scale project, while ambitious, was already disrupting fragile desert ecosystems and harming local wildlife populations. This time, the attack was more insidious. It wasn't just a corporate smear. It was a direct assault on the very heart of Musk's vision. The Sahara Solar project was supposed to be a model for the future of energy. If these claims gained traction, they could undo years of progress. Musk was sitting in his office when he got the news. He immediately called Sarah Park. "Get me everything you can on this report. We need to fight this before it spreads." Park's voice crackled through the phone. "We're already on it. We've got teams investigating the claims. But it's bad timing, Elon. The last thing we need right now is more controversy." "I know," Musk said, a steely edge creeping into his voice. "But we can't let them win. Not this time." The war for the future was about to escalate to new heights. Musk had survived one battle, but a larger conflict was brewing on the horizon. The fight for renewable energy wasn't just about technology or politics anymore. It was a battle for Musk's legacy and for the survival of the planet itself. The accusations against the Sahara Solar project were unlike any attack Musk had ever faced. This wasn't just an attack on Tesla's profitability or his personal ambitions. It was an attempt to turn his boldest, most visionary project into a cautionary tale. And if he didn't act swiftly, it could derail everything. The Sahara Solar project, which Musk had championed for years, was supposed to be the cornerstone of his long-term strategy to shift global energy consumption toward renewables. By harnessing the power of the sun in one of the driest and most sun-drenched regions on Earth, Musk had promised to generate enough solar power to not only power Africa but to export energy to Europe and beyond. It was a global energy solution, one that could reshape economies and give billions access to cheap, sustainable power. Now, those very ideals were under siege. Musk sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters, a new report from environmental groups and ex-Tesla employees spread out before him. It wasn't just the claims about disrupting wildlife in the desert. It was the tone of the report, the carefully crafted message designed to create doubt not only in the project but in Musk's entire vision. The report argued that large-scale solar installations in the Sahara Desert could lead to the destruction of fragile ecosystems, particularly certain rare desert plant species and migratory bird routes. Even more damning were claims that the construction of the solar farms, as well as the infrastructure required to export power, was contributing to soil erosion and water scarcity. While these concerns weren't entirely unfounded, the group's sensational framing painted the project as an environmental disaster in the making. And with the media already hungry for controversy, the report was gaining traction. Musk knew he couldn't just ignore it. This project had the potential to fuel his long-term vision of a sustainable, interconnected world. He couldn't let it fall apart over a few bad headlines. He picked up the phone and dialed Sarah Park. "Sarah, get me a full investigation into these claims. I want to know if they're real, and I want it done yesterday." "You got it, Elon. I'm on it." A few hours later, Park and a team of Tesla engineers were sent to the site in northern Africa to assess the situation on the ground. But Musk wasn't content to wait for them to return. He knew that the optics of the situation were just as important as the facts. He needed to control the narrative. As he sat in his office, he began drafting a response. It had to be precise, informed, and, most importantly, honest. Musk had always prided himself on his transparency, even in the face of fierce criticism. And this time would be no different. The next morning, Musk was in Paris for an energy summit. The Sahara Solar Project was scheduled to be one of the main talking points, and the timing couldn't have been worse. As he walked into the conference hall, he could feel the weight of the media's scrutiny. His phone buzzed constantly with updates on the new environmental controversy, but he couldn't afford to get distracted. He had a stage to command, and the world was watching. As he took his seat on a panel with other world leaders and energy moguls, he noticed the press had already turned their attention to the Sahara Solar Project. Cameras flashed as they pointed their lenses at him, eager for any sign of weakness. The moderator, a French journalist known for her sharp wit, wasted no time in bringing up the issue. "Mr. Musk, your Sahara Solar Project has come under heavy fire recently. Environmentalists are accusing you of damaging ecosystems and pushing a green energy agenda that's actually harmful to the environment. How do you respond?" Musk exhaled slowly, his face betraying no emotion as he looked up at the crowd. The spotlight was on him, and he knew this was his moment. He would need to be direct, yet careful. "First of all," he began, his voice calm but firm, "let's be clear. The Sahara Solar Project is not just about producing energy. It's about creating a future where clean, renewable power is the standard for every person on Earth. Yes, the scale of the project is large, and it's a challenging environment. But we're not taking this lightly. Every step we take is informed by the science, by local experts, and by an ongoing commitment to minimizing our impact." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. The journalists were all ears. "The accusations you mentioned are based on a limited view of the project," he continued. "We've been working closely with environmental scientists and conservationists to ensure that we're not only minimizing harm but also improving local ecosystems. In fact, we're using some of the most advanced technology available to monitor the health of desert ecosystems and mitigate potential harm. And I won't apologize for trying to give the people of Africa access to clean energy. If that's harmful, then we have a much bigger problem." The room was silent for a moment as Musk's words hung in the air. He had addressed the controversy head-on, but now it was time to back it up. He knew that his credibility would be on the line for the next few days. He had given the world a message. Tesla wasn't just about innovation in electric vehicles. It was about solving global problems with global solutions. And he would stand by that. The panel discussion continued, but Musk's mind was already working on the next steps. He needed to be proactive, not just reactive. He couldn't afford another PR disaster. And he certainly couldn't afford for the Sahara Solar Project to be derailed by misinformation. Later that day, as the summit wrapped up, Musk was whisked away for a private meeting with a powerful European energy consortium. They had already shown interest in investing in Tesla's solar initiatives, and he knew this could be a pivotal moment. But as he walked into the meeting, his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't just another media update. It was a message from Sarah Park. "Elon, we've completed the on-site investigation. The environmental concerns are valid to some extent, but they are largely overstated. We've already implemented solutions to address the concerns, including the installation of new water conservation techniques and soil stabilization efforts. We can prove the benefits outweigh the risks, but we need to act quickly." Musk's heart rate quickened as he read the message. The data supported his claims. The Sahara Solar Project was not just feasible, it was sustainable. But now, he had to convince the world. That evening, as he prepared for a press appearance to address the controversy once again, Musk's strategy became clear. He wasn't just going to counter the accusations. He was going to take the lead in setting the agenda for the future of energy. It was time to stop defending himself and start defining the conversation. The press conference was broadcast live across the world. Musk, standing tall before a sea of cameras, looked directly into the lens. "I've heard the concerns raised about the Sahara Solar Project," he began. "But let me be clear, this project is not just a vision. It's a lifeline. It's an opportunity to bring renewable energy to regions that need it most. And while we acknowledge the challenges we face in developing such an ambitious project, we have the science, the technology, and the expertise to ensure that it benefits everyone." He paused, letting his words settle before adding, "This is not about protecting old industries. It's about creating a future where energy is abundant, affordable, and clean. The world is changing, and Tesla is leading that change. We will not back down in the face of false narratives. We will continue to innovate, and we will continue to provide solutions." The press conference was a turning point. Musk had reclaimed the narrative. The media coverage in the following days shifted. While there was still some skepticism, the conversation was no longer dominated by accusations. It was now about the future of clean energy and the role that projects like Sahara Solar would play in that future. As Musk walked back to his hotel that night, he couldn't help but feel the weight of everything he had just done. The battle was far from over, but he had sent a message to his critics. He wasn't backing down. The desert storm had passed, for now. But Musk knew that every revolution had its turning point, and this was his. Musk's strategy had worked. For now. But he knew this was just the beginning of what could become an all-out war. While the Sahara Solar Project's future was temporarily secured, the forces arrayed against him were not easily deterred. Behind the scenes, there were whispers, alliances forming in the shadows, and hidden figures who had a vested interest in seeing Musk's vision of a sustainable future falter. The world was changing, but change wasn't always welcomed by everyone. And some of the people who stood to lose the most from a renewable energy revolution were now preparing to strike back. It was a quiet Sunday evening when Musk received a call from an unlikely source, Jack Dorsey. The two men had known each other for years, their paths crossing at various points in the tech world. Dorsey, the co-founder of Twitter and Square, had always been a confidant of sorts, someone who understood the intersection of technology and social influence. Musk had never considered Dorsey to be part of his inner circle, but there was something about his approach to business and disruption that Musk respected. "Elon," Dorsey's voice crackled through the phone, "I've been following the media circus around the Sahara Project. Looks like it's getting uglier by the day. Are you ready for the next wave?" Musk frowned, glancing out the window at the darkened city below. The wind was picking up, a sign that the storm of controversy wasn't over yet. "I'm prepared for whatever comes next. But it's not just about handling the media. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. There are people, powerful people, who don't want to see the energy transition happen. They'll stop at nothing to sabotage it." Dorsey's tone shifted, growing more serious. "I think you're right. The fossil fuel industry is fighting back harder than you realize. But they're not just using traditional tactics anymore. They're going after the very foundations of your credibility. And they're doing it through misinformation and manipulation." Musk's mind began to race. "I know they're playing dirty, but how deep does this go?" Dorsey hesitated before answering. "Let's just say that some of the old tech titans, the ones who've always been skeptical of your ambitions, are getting involved. They see you as a threat, Elon, not just because of Tesla, but because you're disrupting their industries. You're challenging the entire status quo." As the call ended, Musk's thoughts swirled. Dorsey had always been a straight shooter, and what he was saying struck a chord. The stakes had just gone higher. This wasn't just about building a better car or solar panel anymore. It was about changing the very fabric of the global energy and tech landscape, and that kind of disruption didn't come without consequences. He spent the next few hours drafting a plan, an offensive strategy to counter the forces that were now targeting him. But as always, Musk was one step ahead. His approach was never purely reactive. It was proactive. If they wanted to undermine him, he would give them nothing to attack. If they wanted to push him into a corner, he would turn that corner into an opportunity. The following morning, Musk found himself in a high-stakes meeting with Tesla's executive team. It was time to regroup and set the stage for the next phase of the fight. His immediate task was to double down on Tesla's public image, especially in the face of mounting criticism. Musk had made it clear that Tesla wasn't just another car company. It was a movement. But movements didn't survive without solid defenses. And Musk needed his company to be a fortress. "Sarah," he said, looking across the table at Tesla's chief of communications, "I want a full-scale response team in place. We need to address every accusation, every piece of misinformation, and make sure that nothing sticks. We've already weathered the first storm, but this next wave is going to be much worse." Sarah Park nodded. "I'll get the team on it. We'll need a multi-pronged approach: press releases, interviews, and direct engagement with the tech community. We can't just rely on the media this time. We need to be proactive and engage with the influencers who matter." Musk's eyes narrowed. "I don't just want a response. I want to control the conversation. We've built this company on the truth, and now we're going to use that truth to fight back." In the days that followed, Musk's plan took shape. Tesla launched a massive media campaign that not only countered the misinformation but also highlighted the company's commitment to transparency. This included a live-stream tour of the Sahara Solar Project, showing the technology in action and disproving the environmental concerns. Tesla also partnered with several high-profile environmental groups to conduct independent audits of the project's ecological impact. At the same time, Musk's public statements began to take a more assertive tone. During a keynote at an international energy conference, Musk boldly declared, "We are at a crossroads. The future of humanity is dependent on our ability to transition away from fossil fuels and towards sustainable energy. Anyone who says otherwise is either ignorant or working for the industries that have been poisoning our planet for decades. We are not just building cars. We are building a future where clean energy powers the world. And I will fight for that future, no matter the cost." But even as Musk continued to push forward, the enemy was moving in silence. Behind closed doors, the forces aligned against Musk were making their move. The fossil fuel industry, tech moguls with conflicting interests, and even some within his own company who saw the writing on the wall were starting to form alliances. These people had resources, connections, political influence, and the ability to manipulate public perception on a massive scale. A few days after Musk's bold declaration, Tesla's stock took a sudden and unexpected dive. It wasn't a huge drop, but it was enough to raise eyebrows. Musk's team quickly began investigating the cause, and it didn't take long to uncover a disturbing pattern. It seemed that a coordinated short-selling attack was underway. Groups of investors, likely tied to Musk's most vocal critics, were betting against Tesla's future, deliberately driving down the stock price to weaken the company's position. Musk wasn't one to back down. But this was a different kind of battle. This wasn't just about answering accusations. This was about protecting the very foundation of his empire. He immediately called a meeting with Tesla's CFO, Robin Denholm. "We need to act. Now. The short sellers are moving, and they're targeting us from all angles. I want our lawyers on this, our financial analysts, and I want the SEC involved." Denholm looked concerned, but her voice was steady. "We're on it, Elon. But the timing's tricky. The markets are volatile right now. If we go too hard after these guys, it could backfire." Musk leaned forward. "I don't care about the timing. We're not going to let them take us down. They've underestimated us before. But this time, we're going to use every tool we have at our disposal. We'll expose them, and we'll show the world exactly who's behind this." In the days that followed, Musk's legal and financial teams launched a counterattack, focusing on gathering evidence of market manipulation. They filed complaints with the SEC and began gathering data on suspicious trading activities. Musk also doubled down on his media efforts, using his vast social media reach to keep the public's attention on the real story. That Tesla wasn't just another car company. It was a catalyst for change, and nothing would stop that. Meanwhile, the Sahara Solar Project continued to move forward, despite the opposition. Musk wasn't going to let the controversy derail it. He knew that the road to a sustainable future was never going to be easy, But he also knew that every time they fought back, they came out stronger. As he sat at his desk, reviewing the latest updates on the market manipulation case, Musk couldn't help but think of the bigger picture. This wasn't just about a company or a project. It was about shifting the global paradigm. And that was something that no amount of money, media manipulation, or corporate alliances could stop. But as the battle raged on, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the precipice of something much bigger than he had ever imagined. The stakes had grown higher, the opposition fiercer, and the future of the planet was hanging in the balance. Musk was no stranger to conflict. From the early days of Tesla's struggles to his battles with the automotive industry, he had always faced opposition with the same mix of defiance and innovation. But this felt different. The forces arrayed against him were more coordinated, more powerful, and, most unsettling of all, they were hiding in the shadows. The coordinated attack on Tesla's stock was not only about undermining the company's financial stability, it was about breaking Musk's resolve. In the days that followed the short-selling scandal, Musk found himself in increasingly difficult conversations with his inner circle. His team was working tirelessly to expose the manipulation, but the pressure was mounting from all sides. The media was still hungry for any morsel of negative press, and the Sahara Solar project, despite Musk's defiant media blitz, remained in the crosshairs. Even his most dedicated supporters were starting to question whether Musk was stretching himself too thin. Tesla's stock was volatile. The media was relentless. And now, powerful figures in the energy and tech sectors were openly calling for Musk to step down, questioning his ability to manage both Tesla and his other ventures. In the quiet hours before dawn, Musk sat alone in his office at Tesla's headquarters, staring at the glowing screen in front of him. The data was right there, staring him in the face. Tesla's stock was barely holding its ground, and the accusations against him were growing louder. He didn't fear losing money. He didn't even fear losing Tesla itself. What scared him more than anything was the possibility that the world would lose faith in the very idea that had driven him for years. That humanity's future depended on the rapid transition to renewable energy, and that he, of all people, could lead that charge. For the first time in a long while, Musk asked himself the question that had been lingering in the back of his mind. What if I'm not strong enough for this? What if the fight isn't worth it? The phone rang, breaking his thoughts. It was Sarah Park. Elon, we've got an urgent update. The SEC has launched an official investigation into the stock manipulation. We've got enough evidence to implicate some of the big players behind this, people with deep ties to the fossil fuel industry, and even a few tech executives who stand to lose from Tesla's success. Musk felt a strange sense of relief wash over him. The pieces were starting to come together. He wasn't imagining the conspiracy. It was real, and it was time to go on the offensive. Good, he said, his voice steady now. I want us to go public with everything we've found. We need to expose these people. No more hiding behind the scenes. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, press conferences, and legal maneuvering. Musk knew that this was the moment he had been preparing for, the reckoning. It was no longer enough to defend himself against accusations. He had to take the fight to his enemies and show the world just how deep the corruption went. He held a live-streamed press conference where he made his most direct accusation yet. Ladies and gentlemen, we have uncovered a coordinated effort to sabotage Tesla and the future of renewable energy, Musk began, his voice resolute. Behind the scenes, powerful forces in the fossil fuel industry, along with certain individuals in the tech world, have been actively working to undermine the transition to clean energy. They want to keep us dependent on their old systems of control, but they are not going to succeed. He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. The room was silent. We've collected evidence of market manipulation, coordinated attacks on our stock, and smear campaigns designed to discredit our projects. These individuals are not just attacking Tesla. They are attacking the future of the planet, and I will not let them succeed. The press conference sent shockwaves through the media. The allegations were explosive, and the public response was overwhelming. Tesla's stock surged as millions of people, inspired by Musk's words, rallied behind his cause. The media, which had once painted him as a reckless billionaire, now began to portray him as a revolutionary leader, someone who was standing up to entrenched power, even at great personal cost. But the fight was far from over. The SEC's investigation into the market manipulation was just the beginning. As the days wore on, Musk and his team uncovered more and more evidence of corruption within the industries trying to stop him. He had long suspected that the fossil fuel industry had a vested interest in keeping Tesla down, but now it was clear that some of the most powerful figures in Silicon Valley were also working behind the scenes to undermine his work. A leak to the press revealed that several high-profile tech executives, including former allies of Musk, were part of a covert group that had been actively working against him. They were quietly funneling money into smear campaigns, organizing PR attacks, and even pushing for anti-Tesla legislation. Their goal was simple: to preserve the status quo and protect their own interests, regardless of the environmental cost. One name in particular kept coming up: David Harmon, the CEO of a rival energy company that had once been an ally of Musk's. Harmon had publicly supported renewable energy initiatives in the past, but behind closed doors, it appeared that he had been funding opposition to Musk's projects for years. Musk wasn't one to shy away from confrontation, but this was personal. Harmon had once praised Tesla's efforts, even sending Musk messages of support in the early days of the company. Now, he had turned on him, aligning himself with the very forces Musk had spent his life fighting against. With the investigation now in full swing, Musk's legal team prepared to take action against those responsible. But even as the legal battle began to take shape, Musk knew that this war wasn't just about exposing the people behind the manipulation. It was about winning the hearts and minds of the public. He took his message global, speaking at major conferences around the world, and using his platform to push for greater transparency in the energy sector. His words resonated with millions of people who felt powerless in the face of corporate greed. People who, like Musk, were beginning to see that the only way forward was to disrupt the system, and that Musk, for all his flaws, was the one willing to lead that charge. But the pushback was fierce. Harmon, who had been keeping a low profile, re-emerged in the media with a powerful counter-narrative. He accused Musk of being a dangerous idealist, a man too consumed by his own ego to see the bigger picture. His company, he claimed, was a pragmatic solution to the world's energy crisis, one that worked within the existing infrastructure rather than trying to dismantle it completely. Harmon's narrative was slick, polished, and dangerous. He portrayed Musk as a man who had become too arrogant to listen to the experts, someone whose vision was too extreme to be practical. The media ate it up. Harmon's connections, both in the energy sector and Silicon Valley, allowed him to push this message with unprecedented reach. Musk knew that Harmon's attack wasn't just about personal rivalry. It was about preserving the status quo at all costs. And if he was going to win this fight, he would need to do more than just defend himself. He would need to dismantle the very system that was trying to crush his vision. He gathered his closest advisors. We need to show the world the truth about Harmon and his company. We need to expose the web of corruption and corporate manipulation that has been fueling this attack. Sarah Park, Tesla's communications chief, nodded. We've been compiling evidence, but it's going to take more than just a media campaign. We need a major move, a game changer. Musk's mind raced. He had been up against the odds before, but this time, he had the tools and the determination to see this through to the end. I have an idea, Musk said, a gleam of determination in his eyes. Let's make them regret underestimating us. The intensity of the battle had reached its peak. Musk had been through countless challenges in his career, but the fight against a covert alliance of tech moguls, energy tycoons, and shadowy financial forces was unlike anything he had ever experienced. For the first time, his entire vision for the future, his hopes for humanity's sustainable energy future, seemed to be on the line. In the weeks following his public declaration of war, Musk found himself locked in a whirlwind of legal battles, media confrontations, and high-stakes negotiations. Tesla's stock had become a battleground, and the Sahara Solar project was facing unprecedented scrutiny. Despite his best efforts to fight back, the opposition was relentless. Behind the scenes, the battle raged on. Harmon, the former ally turned adversary, had proven to be a formidable foe. His media campaign had gained traction, and his carefully crafted narrative of Musk as a reckless disruptor had taken hold in certain circles. Harman had positioned himself as the voice of reason, the pragmatist, while Musk, in his eyes, was the wild-eyed idealist who was threatening the status quo. Musk's team, however, wasn't backing down. Tesla's legal and communications departments had launched a series of counteroffensives, but it was becoming clear that winning this battle in the courts and on social media wasn't enough. The forces aligned against Musk weren't simply trying to destroy Tesla. They were attempting to dismantle his entire vision for the future. It was at this moment, when all seemed darkest, that Musk realized the truth. This wasn't just a fight for Tesla's survival. This was a fight for the future of humanity itself. It was a quiet night when Musk sat alone in his office at SpaceX's headquarters, his mind spinning with strategies and ideas. He had always believed in the power of technology to change the world, but it was clear now that he had to do something bigger. The conspiracy against him wasn't just about Tesla. It was about preserving a world that had grown complacent with the existing power structures. He thought about the people who had supported him, the millions of customers who had bought Tesla cars, the engineers who had poured their hearts into the company, and the activists who had rallied behind the Sahara Solar project. They weren't just supporting a company. They were supporting a revolution. And Musk realized that if he was going to win this fight, he had to bring that revolution into the spotlight. The next morning, Musk made a bold decision. He would use SpaceX to launch a groundbreaking mission. A mission that would not only change the way humanity viewed energy, but would also expose the full scale of the conspiracy that had been undermining his efforts. He called a meeting with SpaceX's top engineers. "We're going to send a satellite into space, one that will not only capture the data from our Mars missions, but will also be equipped with technology that could revolutionize the way we generate energy on Earth." The room fell silent. Musk's vision was clear. He wasn't just going to send a rocket into space. He was going to use SpaceX's resources to create a tangible demonstration of the future of energy, a future that was independent of the fossil fuel industry and the corrupt systems that had tried to silence him. "We're going to demonstrate to the world that energy can be harvested from space, and we're going to show how this technology will change everything," Musk continued. "But we're also going to use this as a message to the people behind this conspiracy. We're going to show them that we won't be intimidated, and we won't back down." The next few weeks were a blur of activity as SpaceX engineers worked around the clock to develop the satellite. It would be the most advanced piece of technology Musk had ever launched, a satellite designed not only to capture solar energy from space, but also to transmit that energy back to Earth. Musk believed that this could be the breakthrough humanity needed to move beyond fossil fuels once and for all. The satellite, dubbed Solaris, was built with cutting-edge technology, capable of harnessing the sun's energy more efficiently than any device ever created. It would be launched into a high orbit around Earth, where it would collect solar power 24/7 and beam that energy back down to Earth's surface. As the launch day drew near, the pressure on Musk and his team grew. This was no longer just about SpaceX's success. It was about proving that renewable energy could be more than a theoretical dream. It could be a reality that would change the course of history. On the day of the launch, the world watched in awe. The news outlets were ablaze with coverage, and millions of people tuned in to watch the launch of Solaris. Musk stood at the control center, surrounded by SpaceX engineers, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a rocket launch. It was a declaration. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8, 7. The tension in the room was palpable. The entire future of Musk's vision, of a world powered by clean energy, was riding on the success of this mission. 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The rocket soared into the sky, leaving behind a trail of fire and smoke. Musk's eyes followed its ascent, knowing that this mission, if successful, could change everything. Days later, as Solaris reached its designated orbit, the world watched as it deployed its solar panels, unfolding like the wings of a bird. The satellite began transmitting data back to Earth, showing that the energy harvest from space was not only possible but far more efficient than anything that had come before it. Musk's triumph was immediate. The technology was revolutionary, and the world took notice. The launch wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was a political statement. In one fell swoop, Musk had shown that humanity could move beyond the fossil fuel system and that the future was, in fact, in his hands. But even as Solaris began transmitting solar energy back to Earth, the conspiracy against Musk didn't fade. Harman, the tech moguls, and the fossil fuel elites weren't going to go down without a fight. The war was far from over. As Musk stood before a global audience, delivering a speech about the success of Solaris and its implications for the future of energy, he made a bold announcement. We've proven that space-based solar power is not just a dream. It's the future, and we are going to bring it to Earth. But this is just the beginning. The forces that have tried to stop us, the ones who have tried to manipulate the market and discredit our work, are still out there, and we will continue to expose them. He paused, his gaze steady. This is not just about Tesla. This is about the future of humanity. And no one, not even the richest and most powerful, can stop us now. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Millions of people rallied behind Musk's words, demanding that governments and corporations embrace the new technology. Governments across the world began to shift their policies towards space-based energy, and the fossil fuel industry, which had once held an iron grip on the global economy, found its influence waning. But the war wasn't won yet. Harman and the other forces arrayed against Musk were still plotting in the shadows. They wouldn't give up without a fight. Musk's fight for the future of humanity was far from over. But with the success of Solaris and the unwavering support of millions of people around the world, he had taken the first step towards securing a future that was truly sustainable. And this was a fight he was willing to take to the very end. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?